Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. And yes, it is me, Sean O'Connell, hosting today. Sincerely, thank all of you who hung around while I was out for a little work-play vacation. A workcation. What's the right way to say that, James Peterson, who's producing today?
I'm always a fan of the you're going to be super surprised by this. I'm a fan of merging words.
You are?
Yes.
So
workcation.
Love the compound word?
Compound word, so workcation is my vote.
All right, well,
but
in any case,
I would also a little Christmassy back here. We got the Ute bling lights going on here.
I will say this.
Perfect,
right now,
perfect week for it.
This time of year, you should be over-indexing on your festive.
Yes.
All right? Wear the ugly sweaters.
I wore the ugly sweater Friday, so it's in the wash.
Gigantic blow-ups, Christmas lights, everything. Do it all. Do it all.
We're going to play OC, and you're the boss for these 3 hours, OC.
That's right.
Welcome back to that. But so you can veto this, but we're going to play classic Christmas songs for the bumper music all
Please
day today. Because to let our audience know, we're going to do a best of show.
Okay.
Some interviews with Zachariah the last couple weeks.
Wait,
mostly
hold on.
Today.
Are you suggesting?
We're going to do that tomorrow.
Are you suggesting that Zachariah was part of the best of the Sean O'Connell show?
Over the recently.
Okay. So recent
best of,
okay.
Not best for the year.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not doing best not a best of for the year. We'll probably do that. We've got next week as well that we'll do some best of. So
okay. All right.
We'll probably do that next week, but this is just recent best of, maybe some of Zachariah's best interviews, a lot of our interviews from today. That'll be tomorrow, and then we're back live again on Thursday and Friday. Boxing Day live.
Okay. Love it. We're going to talk a little boxing, by the way. We'll spend an eensy-beensy amount of time on Usyk Fury on the show today. Going to be a fun one because I am catching up, like many of you are, with this new world of college football, this new world of expanded 12-team college football playoff format. You got bowl games on right now. UTSA, the Roadrunners of San Antonio against Coastal Carolina, a powerhouse matchup of obscure avian mascots. 6-6 teams. The Roadrunners and the Chanticleers, which is a phenomenal mascot, by the way. There's like Pittsburgh State is the Gorillas. That might be a better college mascot than a Chanticleer, but Chanticleer is as good as it gets for the obscure mascot that nobody else is going to copy. Good for you, Coastal Carolina. Also a sneaky great color scheme that they lean into with the teal field. A lot easier on the eyes for some reason than the blue of Boise State. So we're going to have a fun show today. I'm going to try to get back in the swing of things. And, again, I appreciate everyone who held it down. Obviously, my guy Zachariah for filling in, all the guests who joined him, James and Zach and the crew. And Alonzo's going to be back, part of things, sooner than later. We love him, and the whole Sarañana family went through a really, really hard time very recently. And hug your loved ones tight because it's the time of year to do that, number one, and because nobody's guaranteed anything. So we're super happy to be back. I'm super happy to be back. James didn't go anywhere. We're super happy to be back together on the air. And I want to talk about the expanded college football playoff. We're going to have Adam Rittenberg. We're going to have Gordy Chiesa. We're going to have a little Utes insider action with our guy Alex Markham. And at some point, I'm still trying to effort Jeff Schwartz to get him on the show. This is a time of year, James. It's like Jeff really – everyone calls Jeff Schwartz this time of year because for those of you who are not aware, Jeff Schwartz, the Schwartz family, they're Jewish. And Christmas vacations don't often affect the Jewish community the same way. So Jeff gets called to fill in for every single show during this time of year. He is like the go-to guy. He does Sunday stuff all year long, not only because he's an NFL veteran, but also because Sundays are that's not the Sabbath for men of his faith, and it just works out nicely for him.
Yeah, and that being said, I thought you were going to go with it's really hard to book this time of year, because I could tell you don't have to tell me. These last 2 weeks have been quite a challenge to book show. We made it work, but that's something we're gonna do our best with this week. We've got our even some of our staples that were pre-booked, if you will, certain days because it's Christmas week. They're not going to be available, so we'll do our best with that. And Jeff Schwartz is one of those, but it sounds like he's maybe more available to fill in as host, but that probably makes him a little less available as a guest. So we'll see if we can get Jeff on. He's going to be in studio with us for his hit.
If you're in downtown Salt Lake City and you see if you see
a massive human being,
a Yeti-sized individual walking around, it is not a marketing ploy for the Utah Hockey Club. It is Jeff Schwartz.
Although we should tell him to get a Yeti mascot just to mess with people.
I tried to get him to go to the game tonight, but his wife had made plans.
Ah, man.
So anyway, Utah Hockey Club in action tonight. Lots of stuff to talk about. The transfer portal humming and churning, and it's not all good news for the University of Utah. The question I put out there today, the poll question, as I try to get back into the swing of things, is it's a pretty basic one. So far, the transfer portal, net positive, net negative, net neutral for Utah football. Where are you sitting with that? Think about it. Talk about it. Text me, 877-353-0700 on the Dish Pros text line. And as you're framing your expectations for what the new players for Utah are going to do for this team, and you're thinking about what the casualties, the losses, are going to do in terms of detriment to this team, you're now looking at a lens where you've got an expanded college football playoff and improved access and ability for teams that have solid seasons to make it. You don't have to have that once-in-a-generation great season as a Power 5 team or Power 4 team. You don't have to have the year that Boise State is having right now. You don't have to be a Sugar Bowl year. You don't have to be a Fiesta Bowl year. You don't have to be undefeated if you're the University of Utah to make it to a college football playoff. Part of the reason why this year hurt so bad for everybody watching and having those high expectations and the bad luck and the injuries and the whatever other problems reared their ugly heads for Utah, all of that sort of culminates in a playoff picture where teams that did have their magical seasons, like Indiana, had an absolutely magical season, only to crash and burn when they get to that college football playoff. And it caused a situation that is really unfortunate, where the revisionist conversation and the revisionist history comes into play for all of the pundits and all the talking heads and all the people who have a microphone in front of their face, like I am so fortunate to have a microphone in front of my face for a living. So many people say like, yep, see, didn't deserve to be there. This performance obviously tells you that. There was nothing impressive on their resume. They don't belong. They don't belong. Ha ha. And they did that with every team that lost. Now, okay, if that's the stance you want to take, fine. If you want to ignore a regular season, even if a regular season doesn't include a stellar strength of schedule, if you want to pretend like it is commonplace and it is easy for a team like Indiana to have a season that they had, and then to say because it didn't work out ultimately for them at the end, that they don't deserve to be in the position they are in after they earned it for 12 weeks, because they did. They earned it for 12 weeks. To then go back and say, well, now I have the benefit of hindsight, and it turns out they are not as good as this team who is better than them. Well, let's not do that, because first of all, your other options, if you take Indiana out, who goes in?
Lots of people would say Bama.
Okay. The same Alabama team that had 3 opportunities to not make mistakes this year and instead made those mistakes. The same Alabama team that looked spectacular some weeks, better in at least one week than Indiana's looked in any individual performance this year, but in at least 3 weeks, as we talked about before it happened, and at least 3 weeks, and twice against 500 teams, went out there and laid eggs. If you want to say, well, Alabama's more talented, and we know more about Kalen DeBoer, so I believe that in this situation, they would have matched up better, and that would have been a different game. That would have been a better game. Do you think Alabama would have won that game, James Peterson?
Are we talking Indiana right now? Indiana, Notre Dame?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay.
Honestly,
so
listen.
The result is the same.
Yes. Honestly, I think what we saw from the late game in Columbus, Ohio State versus Tennessee, listen, I was not optimistic about at all because of the way that they ended the season against Michigan.
Okay.
And the way that they threw the game away at the end against Oregon. I was not optimistic that Will Howard was going to have what it took, right? In particular. He did. But that to me showed the power of home field advantage more than anything.
Well, did it though? Because there were 30,000. Kirk Herbstreit said
That's true.
40,000.
It was a ton of orange in there.
They were singing Rocky Top
It's
and
true.
drowning out the Ohio State fans at the shoe because, James, a lot of Ohio State fans are spoiled on the same level of success that you as an Ohio State fan have been spoiled on.
They were feeling as pessimistic about it as I probably was, even more so, I think.
The same reason that Rice-Eccles Stadium, when BYU was playing that game,
was a lot of blue.
There was a lot of blue, right? It's because we as fans now do this thing where, especially if you're a fan of a really, really good team and you get spoiled and accustomed to that success, you go, you know what? They don't have it this year. Oh, we just lost to Michigan. Will Howard, he ain't it because he had a bad performance or two bad performances. And we forget that these are guys in their early 20s at best. Sometimes they're teenagers, and we forget that the product is inconsistent from week to week. And so when we take a bad performance, something like Indiana didn't look their best, right? And Tennessee didn't look their best, and SMU didn't look their best, and you take it and you say, that tells me that everything I believed in the last 12 weeks, where they built up this resume, 13 weeks, actually, I should say, where they built up this resume that got them here, everything I believed about them and everything that my eyes told me, and that was probably in most cases confirmed by the expert analysis, all of that was wrong because this week they didn't look good.
Yeah, it's idiotic. It certainly is. But I would say, even though I think on a neutral field, the way Ohio State plays the way they did, using the Ohio State game, Tennessee game as an example, Ohio State plays the way they did in Columbus Saturday night on a neutral field. They probably win by a couple scores anyway. But that being said, I think that we saw that home field advantage was huge in these games. I think a neutral site game, Penn State beats SMU, sure, but it's closer. I think that Clemson might beat Texas if that's neutral site. That's the thing that people aren't talking enough about. Clemson, they lost by 2 scores, but they were, a 4th down stop on the goal line from being a 1-score game with still 8 minutes left on the clock, time to go tie it up after being down big. Like, Clemson might upset Texas if that's an Orange Bowl game. Indiana still loses to Notre Dame, but it's a much more competitive game, I think, if it's not in South Bend. I think that the biggest thing we learned was not the committee got some of the teams wrong. It was that this home playoff game is huge for the first round.
What we have done is we have gotten an improved picture of college football playoff access, and we have decided to complain about it instead of being like, oh my gosh, how amazing is this that you have playoff football. The alternative, by the way, in a 4-team college football playoff system is that SMU and Tennessee and all of these teams that didn't end up looking as good as you wanted them to, Clemson, that they are playing in meaningless bowl games, the quote unquote meaningless bowl games.
It's another one of the lesser New Year's Six bowls.
And by the way, in that case, all the good players on the team opt out.
Yes, the same. We see what we saw with Florida State last year when it should have been a great Georgia versus Florida State. Who's the real national champion type New Year's Six bowl game, non-playoff game? Instead, Florida State's player says, "Hey, we got screwed. I'm out."
They had like 22,
and they lost 40-0.
They had like 22 opt-outs because they were done wrong, and obviously they got really bad bad luck, and so it just like.
This is much better.
This is amazing.
It's so much better.
I could not believe, because again, I'm flying back into the country as this is happening. I've been living in the lap of luxury on a cruise ship, which I had to jump off the cruise ship to go call fights in France and then back onto the cruise ship. It wasn't real life, okay? It was amazing. I'm so fortunate to be able to do stuff like that, to be able to call that a job, and to be able to spend that time with my family, again, was just – I'm so grateful. I'm more positive today than I've been in months and months and months.
I can tell.
And I'm always a lucky guy, but that was a great reminder of how lucky I am in my life. And I'm flying back in, and right, they have the live TV on planes now, or you're sitting in an airport lounge and you're kind of catching something. And I'm like, wait. And of course, every night I'm scrolling on Twitter on the limited cruise ship internet, and I'm just like, people are bothered.
Yeah.
People are mad. People are like, see, Lane Kiffin's like, oh, that was a great game. Shut up, Lane.
Don't
Seriously,
lose 3 times.
Shut up. If you're a coach or a player on a program that lost 3 games and is mad you didn't get invited to the party that's a little bit bigger now, shut up. If you want to be part of that next year, don't lose 3 games. Alabama, I love Kalen DeBoer. I think he's a great coach. Alabama is so spoiled and so entitled and thinks that, like, well, look how much NFL talent we have. So then why did you lose 3 games? That's actually a bigger indictment on you.
Yeah.
If you're like, well, we're way more talented than them. Are you? Why did you lose 3 games? It's not because your schedule was way tougher.
Are you saying it was the coaching? Is that what you're saying, Kalen?
What I'm like, and everyone in the SEC wants to go, well, schedule. Everyone in the SEC is so good. No, they're not. No. The SEC, we're finding out in this playoff, the SEC is not any better than the Big Ten, certainly. And the SEC, when it's all said and done, the hardcore football fans who really pay attention to what they're watching, they're going to say this was like as down of a year as the SEC's ever had.
Yeah.
From a talent standpoint, the draft is going to bear that out, I think. All of it. And so the idea that you have one region of the country that has been kind of holding on to exclusive college football playoff rights now being mildly upset because everyone gets to come to the party is the most gratifying and hilarious experience that I've ever seen. Now, and I don't even get to dance on this because the Big 12 is being embraced properly, or because, the region that we live in and where the large universities in this state now compete is not being treated properly by this 12-team system. So I don't get the gratification there. But for once, James Peterson, a change in college football was put in place, and it worked out the way that everyone hoped it would.
Yeah.
That there was great atmospheres for home playoff games, on-campus playoff games, that the entire country stayed engaged in the conversation once we got to this point in the year, that multiple fan bases were part of something special, even if it didn't work out, and even if it all came down to a crashing halt, and even if the revisionist historians want to tell you, Cignetti's actually not that good of a coach, and Indiana's not that good of a team, and I've been saying that all year. No, you haven't. Shut up. What happened is they didn't show up, and they got beat. And Alabama did that a bunch of times, and Ole Miss did that a bunch of times, and Utah did that a bunch of times, and BYU, who was in the driver's seat for their own place in the college football playoff, unfortunately did that a bunch of times. And you don't get to cry about it just because you come from a conference and you come from a place of entitlement.
The best thing I heard on this was SVP Scott Van Pelt on SportsCenter after the games were over, after the Ohio State game got over. and he's talking with Tim Hasselbeck in his studio there, and he says, we don't do this with any other sport. We can't do this with any other sport. We can't say, oh, have you seen the Cincinnati Bengals? Have you seen them? They don't have as good a record as the Denver Broncos, but I'll tell you what, they'd have a better shot against the Buffalo Bills than the Broncos would.
That's a great point.
They
SVP.
don't do that stuff, and it's the thing I've hated about college athletics. To be honest with you, now it's nice for our business. It's always a talking point. But the thing as a fan I've hated about college athletics the most is that there's not an even enough playing field to even say with this system that you've definitively got the best 12 teams in, because the ACC is not the same schedule as the Big 12, because the Big 12 is not the same schedule as the Big 10, because even Indiana had in the Big 10 their schedule was not near as hard, near as difficult as Penn State in the same conference. Because of those kind of variations, we can't do it like pro sports and be be like, well, they were one of the top. They qualified as a top 12 team, so they're definitively a top 12 team in the country, and that's what happens. And I'm not sure that the committee and the NCAA, the College Football Playoff, I'm not sure that they want it to be that definitive, because I think they really like this consternation. I think they really like radio stations and TV shows across the country complaining about whatever they did or lauding their praises, and it being super polarizing like that, because it keeps them relevant. But I also don't know that it's the best thing for the sport.
I'll say
but
this.
It's where we are, and it probably is where we always will be.
The part of the reason why I felt it was important to have this conversation on my first show back is not just because of the timing of it and because the first weekend of an expanded college football playoff just wrapped up, but because you're going to have this happen again in the second round. All right? In the Peach Bowl and especially in the Fiesta Bowl, there are going to be haters that are just waiting for Boise State to underperform or for Arizona State to underperform and saying, ha, told you. That's why it should have been Alabama instead of Boise State. Pull out Indiana, pull out Clemson, pull out Tennessee, pull out like anyone who lost this weekend. Take their name out and put Boise State in there, put Arizona State in there. What these voices that are telling you, this isn't what you wanted, this isn't good, we got the wrong teams in here. What they want is for you to ignore what you see during the regular season and to have such profound brand loyalty that you will crown certain programs before the season even begins. And all they have to do is maintain quality above like a B+. They don't have to have special seasons as long as they've got the right conference and the right logo. And it's terrible for multiple reasons. It's something, like James just said, we don't do in other sports. We don't get to do it in other sports. And I realize that there's a reason it happens here. There's a motivation for it here because of that scheduling disparity. But if Penn State goes out and somehow stops Ashton Genty, which no one has been able to do this year, these exact same folks who were telling you that Indiana was never that good are going to be doing that about Boise State times 1 trillion.
Oh yeah, we're going to look back on this week and this past weekend and all the complaints about SMU and Indiana in particular, and we're going to go, that was nothing compared to what we're going to hear about if Penn State blows out, especially if they blow out Boise State. That being said, I've never been much of a believer with Penn State in big games. I think Boise State's got a real shot at this game, OC. What do you think about?
You mean Ashton Genty's got a real shot?
Yeah, Ashton Genty's got a real shot to upset these guys.
This is why. Okay, so I didn't think it was going to be Penn State. Honestly, count me among the haters probably that thought that Franklin just wasn't going to be able to get this thing done. So good for him.
Yeah.
Right? Congratulations to Penn State and to James Franklin more specifically for silencing some of those doubters, myself included. But I didn't think Boise State was going to have to deal with this particular team. I thought the SMU matchup, I was going to, like, All right, Boise State. Boise State's going to make it to the Final Four of
I
college
picked
football.
SMU to win too, because of the same reasons. Now we look silly, but yeah.
And it really, in so many ways, their entire season comes down to whether or not Ashton Jeanty gets into the end zone at least twice and rushes for at least 160 yards, which is an insane thing to ask a running back to continue to do. And that leads me to the other thing that, while I was away, had me feeling like I'm taking crazy pills. One was people complaining about the expanded college football playoff, and two was the argument in the closest Heisman Trophy race that we've had in decades. The argument, how many people were big mad that Travis Hunter won the award. I was so surprised. Now, I love the support for a mid-major conference guy. I love the support for the underdog in Ashton Jeanty. I truly do. But we have seen great running backs. We've even seen record-setting running backs in the past. We have never in our lifetime seen a Travis Hunter. You know how hard it is to be unique in college sports these days? To do something that hasn't been done? And we got to see that this year. And justifiably, Travis Hunter was decorated as the best player in college football for it. And James, I'm not proud of this, but I engaged in several arguments on Twitter while I was in the Mediterranean Sea, cruising.
Just living rent-free in OC's head.
Yeah. I'm not proud of the fact that those people got under my skin.
While you're on vacation.
But Genty's a good running back. I'm like, okay.
Who's saying he's not? He's a Heisman finalist. Of course he's a good running back.
He's not a good running back. He's an exceptional, stellar, amazing, once-in-a-generation, certainly for Boise State, running back. But guess what? Travis Hunter is the best player in college football, even when there is a once-in-a-generation running back. Even if there's a player on his team, his own team is going to be drafted higher than him because he plays a more important position. Travis Hunter was an All-American on both sides of the ball. He played double the snaps of your favorite starter on your favorite team. And he did it at an elite level. Travis Hunter, let's localize this to Utah. There's not a single person listening to this radio station who doesn't believe that Clark Phillips deserved his unanimous All-American status, right? Travis Hunter's defensive numbers statistically were better than Clark Phillips that season. Passer rating against him in coverage.
That's only one of the positions he played.
Gave up fewer catches and fewer yards and fewer touchdowns than unanimous All-American Clark Phillips. And this is obviously not a point I'm making to bring down Clark Phillips. He was justifiably named one of the best corners in college football that year. An All-American, right? Indisputably. And people were coming at me. He's not even elite on the defensive side of the ball. What are you talking about? He was the second best corner of all of college football this year while also being the Biletnikoff Award winner.
They didn't throw in his direction.
And when they did, do you know how many yards Travis Hunter gave up on the season, James?
I don't.
200 yards.
Yeah, that's insane.
Total.
Over 12 weeks, because they only played 12 games.
Total.
12 weeks, 200 yards.
He gave up 200 yards. He had 4 interceptions. He had 15 passes defended, good enough for 4th in the country. And by the way, third in the Power 4 level. He was 2nd in touchdown receptions in the country, while also being the second best corner in all of college football. So you could make an argument just based on his numbers, even if you don't do the eyeball test thing, and if you don't factor in that he was playing both sides of the ball, if you just take the numbers on one side of the ball and on the other side of the ball, you can make a pretty easy statistical case, if you don't even watch him play, that he was top 3 in Power 4 football as a wide receiver and top 2 as a corner. If you just want to just analyze the offensive season and the defensive season by itself, you could just take those, separate them, and say, maybe the best, maybe the best. And then it's the same human being doing it. Ashton Jeanty is one unbelievable football player, and Travis Hunter is 2 unbelievable football players in one body. And that's why the Heisman Trophy being given to him was the right thing. And I know that's old news, but I got in these arguments and I wanted to bring it to the air. Thanks, everybody. It's so great to be back. Holy cow. All right. Opening segment of the Sean O'Connell Show, always brought to you by Alvi Armani. So if you're having hair issues this holiday season, gentlemen, ladies, maybe it's thinning out more than you'd like, let Alvi Armani help you out. Find them online at alviarmani.com. Tell them ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM sent you. Gordy Chiesa. I cannot wait to talk to Gordy. It's been too long. This Jazz team is not bad enough. How's Gordy going to make it worse? I'll ask him next on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. In 25 minutes, we're going to jump into a transfer portal conversation. We're going to have a hard discussion about what it means for Utah football. The poll question is up at Real OC Sports. Is the transfer portal so far in this cycle a net positive, a net negative, or a net neutral for the University of Utah? We'll get to all of it. Sean O'Connell Show on a Monday, right before Christmas. And a gift for all of you. We're bringing Gordy Chiesa to the airwaves. Gordy Chiesa, our resident NBA insider. Gordy, how are you?
Oh, see, I'm doing fine. Welcome back.
Thank you. It was wonderful to be away, but it's even better to be back. No place like home. Glad to be talking to you about this Utah Jazz team that, while I was away, improved their record enough that I need them to be a little bit worse, Gordy. And I know that this has been a theme of how we've talked, this entire season, knowing that – quite frankly, the Jazz have to get a good draft pick this year. But the results on the floor, as we have touched on many times, are based on the effort of individual players and a coaching staff that wants to show that they are moving things in the right direction. And this Utah Jazz team is not bad enough. So how do you make them worse, Gordy?
Well, just by the trading deadline, where they moved some of the guys that helped the Jazz, be partially successful. So that would be someone like John Collins and Colin Sexton, who plays very hard, Jordan Clarkson. That's how you would do it. And at trading deadline, a key date is Thursday, January 6th, 3 o'clock East Coast time, so 1 o'clock here. So then that could be the way to possibly almost assure the Jazz to pick, we'll say, relatively speaking, in the top 5. However, it's mixed messaging because the players don't cooperate. Because if you were an athlete, which you were, Sean, is that you wouldn't cooperate. You try to win as many games as you can, and likewise the coaching staff. So it's a hard dilemma for everybody involved in the equation. Because if you're a player, you're thinking about the next game tonight, meaning the Cavaliers in Cleveland, and that's all that matters to the players.
And obviously that is a number one in the East Cleveland Cavaliers team with plenty of connections to the market here. Obviously Donovan Mitchell, the most prevalent among them. We've had the conversation about Cleveland several times as well. Are they legit? I think this far into a season, it's pretty easy to say at 25-4, they're a team to be reckoned with. So a successful outing against the Cleveland Cavaliers for the Utah Jazz looks like what? Well,
the first thing yet, defend them, because the Cavaliers really are a juggernaut offensively. They're second in the NBA, Sean, in scoring, only behind the Memphis Grizzlies. They're first in the NBA as far as being the most accurate shooting field goal percentage team at 50.5%, and they're first in the NBA in making threes accuracy at 40.5. You mentioned before about the Utah Tides. Besides Donovan Mitchell, let's not forget, Sean, that Johnny Bryant, the former Jazz assistant coach and Utah standout, is the associate head coach of the Cavaliers, and Sam Merrill, former Utah State Aggie, plays a big part of their success off the bench, where he gets 19.7 minutes per game and 6.8. He might not play tonight because on Saturday night the Cavs beat the 76ers very badly. Sam Merrill hurt his quad, so he might not play. But with that said, they are really good, the Cavaliers. They try to outscore you. And now in Donovan Mitchell, he's their star player, and he made that evolution of being, besides being a scorer, into now more leadership, defensive playmaker. He's averaging career high in steals per game at 1.6, besides averaging 23.3 points per game. So Donovan is his 8th season in the NBA. So they've done a great job with him as far as his maturity.
Gordy Chiesa, our resident NBA insider, is my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show. What is the most valuable trade asset for the Utah Jazz right now? Either the person that you can get the most back for, or the person, because it is a different year for evaluating talent and evaluating value, the person that's subtracting them does the best for you by making you, end up in a better draft position.
Colin Sexton, because Sexton, that guy is good. Whenever that guy is in a game, he starts. His best role would be off the bench, because he's so fiery and he's really an accurate shooter and he plays so hard. So he has the most value of the guys I mentioned, whether it's Jordan Clarkson or John Collins, as far as those guys. So if there's a major injury to a deep playoff team, everybody's staring right at Colin Sexton. His is a contract. This year he makes $18.3 million. He makes next year, the 25-26 season, he makes $19.1. So it's a doable contract to assume. So he would be the guy that, if the Jazz subtracted him from the equation, it would make it much harder for the Jazz to be highly competitive. And also, his point of view, he would go to a playoff-type team. And the Colin Sexton, just add to that, to make it a palace intrigue, both Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson have the same agent, and that's Rich Paul of Clutch Sports. So both those guys could be in play, with Sexton being a little bit higher priority.
As we take a look at not just Cleveland tonight, but what the Utah Jazz have coming up, this holiday schedule. For me, Gordy, Christmas time is really when the focus on the NBA. Football's starting to wind down, and the games are fewer and further between in football. NFL playoffs coming. A college football playoff is, we're in full swing of that. But Christmas is when I think you should start an NBA season. For the Utah Jazz, this next little stretch of games, what intrigues you the most, either because of you want to see certain matchups, or you think they're winnable games, or you think they're games that you absolutely will lose, and that right now is kind of good?
No, it's winnable games. So tonight's game's a tough one in Cleveland. Then the Jazz fly home, and let's not forget, this is the annual Sean Utah Jazz pre-Christmas road trip. So I was part of that for 16 straight years, where the Jazz would go away, give or take, roughly around December, like 11th, 12th, and play usually 5 or 6 games back east. So the Jazz will play at Cleveland tonight. They'll get home around 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, the way the schedule's, I call it the hockey effect now. So now with the Jazz having a second tenant at the Delta Center, is now they go away again. They leave Christmas Day, I'm assuming in the afternoon, to play the Trailblazers the next day on the 26th. So the Jazz should be able to – they could beat Portland at Portland. They did it once this year, and they play the 76ers home on Saturday night. So there's 2 games that the Jazz are absolutely the winnable games, and then they finish the calendar year against the Denver Nuggets. Now, Sean, add to that is that a lot of Jazz fans say the Jazz schedule is really interesting. Now, the Jazz will play 8 straight home games, Sean, between February 12th and March 3rd. So I call again, that's the second tenor hockey effect. So 8 straight games in a row, and from a playing standpoint, that's way too many games being at home in a row, and where the players get a false sense of being way too comfortable.
Way too comfortable at home. It's like that NBA bubble thing. Like you just get. Yes. Do you worry about them? It's easier to get in trouble when you're at home, or you're just the support of the fans. Which, let's be honest, the crowds haven't been typical. They haven't been as stellar as they usually are, for obvious reason here. But what about that long home stand allows you to, I don't know, get too comfortable?
Yeah, too comfortable means, Sean, is that you're out of your routine. Usually speaking, all people that are successful have a certain routine. You have a routine. Hopefully I have a routine, where it's your go-to every day. So for the NBA players, usually speaking, they'll play 3 to 5 games a homestand, then they go away for, again, could be 2 games, 3 games, 4 games, 5 games, then they come back home. And so there's always that rhythm of the schedule. When there's 8 straight games at home, and let's not forget, that's during All-Star Week end. So there's no games at all, period. So it's like it's so unusual not to get on an airplane after a game, home game, to play it the next night or go on a trip. And so comfortable means what? Where you're not with that edge. Usually speaking, when you're really good at something, you have an edge about yourself, not out of control, but you lose that edge when you're home too much. As far as from a playing standpoint, yeah, it's great for your family. I understand that. It's great for your loved ones. Perfect. I understand it. But from a playing standpoint, you take away some of your competitive spirit.
Couple more minutes here with Gordy Chiesa, NBA insider on the Sean O'Connell Show. I'm going to continue our tradition of talking about Victor Wembanyama because I think we're both fascinated by him. I know I certainly am. 50-point game, 5x5 game. We've talked about those. Now he gives us a 10-block performance. Which of those things, and you've seen it all, Gordy, but which of those things do you look at and say, a kid at age 20 should not be able to do that? Not yet.
Yeah, the one 30 points and 10 blocks. That shows his offensive versatility and also his defensive presence. And let's not forget also, a lot of his blocks, besides at the rim, are on perimeter, where they play switch defense to Spurs, so suddenly he's guarding a 6'6", athletic, bouncy jump shooter, and he has enough presence of mind to be the second jumper that challenges the perimeter shot, and also with that unbelievable length that the players have a hard time adjusting their shot to shoot over the extended hands. And so he's first in the NBA as far as blocking shots, and he has played tremendous for the Spurs. He's averaging 3.8 blocks per game. Now, let's not forget, Walker Kessler is second in the NBA this year. He averages 2.9 blocks per game. I looked it up purposely this morning to make sure that I was accurate. Let's not forget, Mark Eaton, former Jazz player, has the record of most block shots per average in a season. Average. Mark in the 1984-85 season averaged 5.6 blocks per game.
When you've got a guy who has 10 blocks in a game and hits 4 3-pointers in the same game like Victor Wembanyama did, Gordy, it's a testament to how different big men are than they were in that Mark Eaton era. Because as much as we love Mark Eaton and as much as we love those contemporaries of his, those guys were shooting 4 3-pointers in a season, and Victor Wembanyama made 4 in the same game he had 10 blocks.
Yeah, very much. So that shows the evolution of Wembanyama-type centers where they play outside, inside versus exclusively only inside. And Victor Wembanyama, in the game you're talking about with the 30-plus points and 10-plus blocks, he joins only 5 other players to do that in a game. Akeem Olajuwon did it 5 times. David Robinson did it 3 times. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar did it once. Dwight Howard did it once. And Artis Gilmore did it once. But no one ever made 4 threes in that game like that, like he did. So it's an unbelievable thing as far as what he does. And what makes it so interesting is he's so young, his versatility. And with Victor Wembanyama, in case you're wondering, or the listeners right now, is that he turns 21 years old on January 4th.
What are we going to get him for his birthday, Gordy? He's given us so much entertainment.
Yes.
What should we send him?
We should send him a picture of you.
We should.
Should. You in a fight. You fighting. Just like where eventually, Sean, the people are going to try to, you can't outplay him. They might try to physical and be tough with him. So let's send a picture of you when you won that $1 million fight in Australia. I'm gonna
offer him my services as a bodyguard and just see what kind of a laugh that gets from a guy who's like 7'4". Hey, Vic, I'll watch out for you. I'll protect you from all these meanies in the NBA.
And also, Sean, he hustled. I mean, it sounds so trivial. Gordy, what are you talking about that he hustles? Don't all the guys hustle in the NBA? Oh, really? Is that he hustles. He plays hard. And that's a unique trait that he has. Most big guys, just generally speaking, try to pace themselves. Wembanyama, to his credit, does not. He goes both ends of the floor. It's very impressive.
So, Gordy, we've also talked when the NBA Cup, Bucks taking down the NBA Cup, and one of the things that you highlighted for me was like, watch what these veteran guys, these guys that are already taken care of, watch what they do with the bonus money they made.
Yes.
And I know you saw what Damian Lillard, the pride of Weber State, did with his money, right?
Yes, I did. Yeah, sure. And that's commendable, what he did. You're exactly right. And that's so important that you give back to people and to charities. And that's what makes it so special. Again, these guys make so much money, and so for other players to be able to do that, to help all kinds of people, is commendable.
For those who maybe aren't aware, don't know, he took all $500,000 of his NBA Cup winnings, and he divided it up and gave it to the rank and file, the stadium staff, and just taking care of the people that make his work environment a safe, happy, fun place for him. And that money, obviously, for them and their salary situation, far more significant than it is for Damian Lillard. So admirable. And he's not the only guy.
Again, a lot of times we hear about negative stories about sports, professional people. This is one, and many others really are positive. Most players, again, just generally speaking, when in that tournament, gave the money to charity. Just generally speaking, most guys did.
All right, Gordy, what's your list today?
All right, Christmas. Hey, I love Christmas. Hey, before I forget, everybody, Feliz Navidad to all. So this is the all-time career scoring leaders for Christmas Day games. So, Sean, the top 10 Christmas Day games. And being on a winning and attractive franchise helps talented scorers gain holiday crossover television exposure to enhance individual player platform brands. So the part of it is that, hey, I'm going to be on TikTok. I'm going to be on all different platforms about showing my dance moves, but also showing that I got game. And so these are the top 10 scorers of all time. Number 10, Walt Bellamy. 9 times on Christmas Day, he scored a total of 237 points. He's in the Hall of Fame back in the 1960s and 70s. Number 9 in the Hall of Fame, Dolph Schayes, 13 Christmas Day games, 239 points. Number 8, he plays for the Denver Nuggets. So he's going to play on Christmas Day. The Nuggets play on Christmas Day at Phoenix. Russell Westbrook, 12 appearances on Christmas Day, total points 271. Number 7, TNT as we speak right now, Shaquille O'Neal, total points 272 in 13 appearances. Number 6, James Harden of the Clippers. Unfortunately, the Clippers are not playing on Christmas Day this year. James Harden, 6th all-time, 273 points on 10 appearances. Number 5 all-time, Dwayne Wade, 314 total points and 13 Christmas Day games. Number 4, this guy's one of the all-time great players. He's playing Denver on Christmas Day, so it's going to be Kevin Durant, his 4th all-time Christmas Day scores, 315 points in 11 appearances going against Nikola Jokic and that crew. Number 3, Oscar Robertson, scored 377 points in 12 appearances, showing he averaged on Christmas Day 31.4 points per game with the holiday spirit. Number 2, Kobe Bryant, played in 16 Christmas Day games. Kobe scored 395 points. And the number 1 player of all time on Christmas Day scoring plays for the L.A. Lakers right now, and they're going to play at Golden State on Christmas night. LeBron James scored 476 points on Christmas Day. He has had 18 straight Christmas Day appearances. His team has won 10 wins, 8 losses. He's averaging 26.4 points per game on Christmas Day. What about Jazz basketball? The last time the Jazz played on Christmas Day was back in December 25th, 2021. The Jazz beat the Dallas Mavericks here at the Delta Center. Donovan Mitchell scored 33 points. Bojan Bogdanovic scored 26 points in that game, and Michael Conley scored 24 points that game. The Jazz record all-time on Christmas Day is 6-2, Sean.
We'll be watching the games. We'll be having ham, hopefully some delicious Christmas cookies, unwrapping presents. Gordy, Merry Christmas to you. Thanks for your time, sir.
Thank you. Peace out and stay well.
Gordy Chiesa, our resident insider. Hot Lunch coming next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700. My favorite, my dad makes his lasagna every year at Christmas, and that is like my favorite thing. I eat a whole pan of lasagna to myself at Christmas. We're not Italian. There's no reason that Italian should be on our Christmas menu, but it is. 877-353-0700. Hit me up. Tell me what your actual plate looks like on Christmas. Not the Thanksgiving plate. I'm talking about Christmas. By the way, sugar cookies on Christmas especially. Whew. Maybe you need some stocking stuffers. Maybe there's someone in your life that's been having trouble sleeping, dealing with some chronic pain. I got someone who can help you out with that. Perfect for stocking stuffers. Most of the things you can find down at Farmer and Chemist will fit quite nicely into a stocking. And beautiful packaging. Looks like a gift and, of course, keeps on giving by making you feel better. Jeff from Farmer and Chemist, friend of the program, joins us again. Jeff, how are you? Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you.
All right, so let's say that, I got a dog that's feeling a little bit old and the joints are not what they used to be. Maybe I have a grandma, a grandpa, a mom, a dad, a cousin that's the same. It's very hard to go to the same store and get stocking stuffers for both my dog and my loved one. Farmer and Chemist, though, you could check both boxes.
Absolutely. This is a great time a year to try CBD if somebody hasn't tried it before, because we are having some specials, which I'll mention in a second. But you're right, CBD works the same in dogs or pets as it does in humans, and they feel the same stress and anxiety that humans do. And this is a great time of year. There's a lot of fun things going on, but it can be very, very stressful as well. So CBD with a little CBN in it is great for sleep and anxiety.
And I'll tell you, the chronic pain you're going to get with that snowmobiling, the climbing up and down the sledding hill, maybe you're taking the family out skiing, that's going to aggravate some of those old injuries. That's going to let you know that it's time to start addressing those things, and you want to do it with natural products from a place that is making sure the dosing is correct and that the sourcing of all the ingredients is correct, and Farmer and Chemist handles all that for you.
Yeah, that's a great point. So if you go skiing or you do something that you don't normally do and you get a little sore, I would recommend have some salve, have some CBD salve on hand, because it's fantastic topical anti-inflammatory, and it doesn't come with any of the side effects that a lot of other prescription type medications come with. So it's CBD is really good for sleep, anxiety, and pain, and then we combine it with other cannabinoids like CBG and CBN, so we find that really the right combination. And we, as pharmacists, would love to have somebody come in and talk to us, because we can talk about dosing, route of administration, what it's good for, what it's not good for, and we just want to be that resource.
All right, let's talk about those specials you have going on, and especially the specials for our ESPN 700 listeners.
Yes, mention ESPN 700, and we will take 20% off any order. And in addition, through the holidays, we are offering 10% off the purchase of a gift certificate. So those can be combined. And so with buying a gift certificate and with the ESPN discount, you can receive 30% off any order.
I'm telling you, you will not find a better stocking stuffer out there. Make sure you tell them in person. Go see them in person. Go say hello. You probably have less work this week, so stop by down there in historic Midvale. Tell Jeff and the crew that we sent you. Merry Christmas, Jeff. Thank you as always.
Merry Christmas. Thank you.
All right. We got to have a hard conversation. We're going to do it next. The transfer portal. Utah has been the beneficiary of some really good additions, players that come from other programs, finish out their career at the University of Utah. They've lost a couple of important guys in the past. Jaquindon Jackson, I think, the one this most recent season that hurt Utah a lot. It's been a bloodbath, not just for Utah, but for every single team here in this 2024 offseason cycle. So we're going to talk about the effect it's having on Utah football's roster, who's winning, who's losing, and, of course, the ones that you really need to be concerned about and that you need to be excited about. Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show on a Monday. James is producing. James, I'm very curious whether or not you're going to play the best Christmas song of all Christmas songs as one of these bumpers. Because so far, they've been great, but I just don't know if you acknowledge which of the great Christmas songs is the greatest. We'll find out.
Yeah, stay tuned.
All right.
We'll see because you haven't told me what you think it is, so we'll just see. We're just going to see if we're great minds think alike or not.
If and when you play it, you'll know that I think it's the greatest. If you don't play it, I'll spend the entire last segment of the show just giving you a lump of coal in your stomach.
And not like the car commercial where Cole is a little black puppy.
No. Sorry.
It's not like that. Okay. Named Cole.
No.
It's actually going to okay.
Be,
I'm just trying to prepare myself.
It'll be a verbal lump of coal. All right. We got to talk about the transfer portal.
I'm going to choose to think it's the puppy still.
It's not going to be a puppy. Spoiler alert, there's no puppy, James. We got to talk about the transfer portal and the effect that it is having already on Utah football, the effect it's going to have on Utah football, and not just Utah, but, of course, every single rock you drop into the pond of college football, the ripples go out and they touch other teams, they touch other programs, coaches, all of it.
If you want to make a ripple, OC, enter the transfer portal.
Look, a big one today. Alex Markham's going to join us in 20 minutes. A big one today that I think, at least if the Twitter reaction is anything that we should pay attention to, Keanu Tanuvasa is in the transfer portal for the University of Utah right now.
That's a tough one. Yeah.
That's a tough one for multiple reasons. He was considered one of the emotional leaders on this team that is not departing because of a lack of eligibility. And he was a guy that, again, am I taking crazy pills? A couple weeks ago, James, Keanu Tanuvasa was subtweeting guys who were leaving the program, saying, what was the exact quote? The lyrics say, "and will be till I die," of course, referencing the fight song, referencing Utah Man. And he posted like a video of them singing it in the locker room and said, and the lyrics say, "and will be till I die." Very clearly a reminder directed at some of his teammates who have chosen to explore other opportunities. Very clearly, and no one can convince me otherwise, not an attack, but a stern, hey, what's your loyalty about kind of a thing. And now he's in the transfer portal. There are so many different ways to look at this, and we're gonna use Keanu as an example, although he's far from the only one. Carson Ryan, you don't want to see that guy leave. You don't want to see him end up at BYU, and I don't think he's going to love that because, look, Aaron Roderick has done a great job. They had a great season. They have not utilized the tight end sufficiently in that offense in the last couple of years. I mean, Isaac Rex, it was an unbelievable talent. I know he had some injury problems, but tight end is not featured nearly enough in that BYU offense. Maybe they thought it was a personnel issue, and so they're addressing it now. You saw Hayden Clegg come back from the mission. Sorry, Hunter Clegg. Hayden Clegg was already on the team. Hunter Clegg was the American Fork big-time recruit. That was a big win for Utah to get the commitment, right? He was wanted by everybody. This is when they were Pac-12 school. And he comes back from the mission on Wednesday and is now transferring to BYU. And this is the most alarming thing for me because Utah will always be a program that is built on a foundation of local players, especially defensive linemen, offensive linemen, running backs, linebackers, guys that play those yeoman's work type positions. Those are the Utah guys you're going to get. Occasionally, a defensive back of enough athleticism emerges from the local high school scene, like a Smith Snowden. But most of those guys are from out of state, right? And the reason those guys come to Utah and have great experiences is because you have this core of individuals who grew up and understand the rivalries and understand the community and understand what it means to be a Ute, and they help to integrate the newcomers, the visitors, the out-of-towners, to make them feel like now Salt Lake is their town too. And Utah had a monopoly on Power 5 football in the state of Utah for a decade. And as much as Tom Holmoe did a phenomenal job and BYU tried its damnedest to put together compelling schedules and good seasons in independence, if you wanted to play big-time football, if you wanted to go on to the NFL, if you wanted to be a guy that was chasing the things that every athlete seems to want to chase, Utah was your best option as an elite talent from the state. Or you were going off to Oregon because they got so many of the good players.
Yeah,
right?
Or Stanford for a while was getting a lot of Utah
right.
talent.
And by the way, I never begrudged a kid going to Stanford because Utah
Absolutely
and BYU can't offer the same resume experience that Stanford can, right? And I never begrudged anyone going to Oregon because Oregon was that Nike factory situation for many years. But when you're talking about the battle between Utah and BYU, Utah had a monopoly while they were a Pac-12 school and BYU was somewhere in this hinterland between mid-major and Power 5 independent, right? Like power independent.
Yeah.
They were in limbo. And now, especially coming off of this one incredible season that BYU was able to put together, and Utah, in the stroke of terrible timing, has its worst season in memory in the same year. Now, if you're one of these guys who's especially a local product, you could not justify going to BYU before if you were like an elite talent. You couldn't talk yourself into it, even after you got back from the mission. And by the way, so many guys, we all know these individuals, right? I didn't serve a mission, okay? Not a member of the LDS faith. Most of my friends are. I know what they were like right when they came back from the mission. I've had many compelling, deep conversations about how much it is your life for those 2 years. And I admire it, and I think it's great. But a lot of those guys, they come back and they consider, I want to be in that environment or something as close to that environment as I can be for the foreseeable future. And BYU has always been that. I want to stay really in the culture. Maybe I should go play at BYU. But you couldn't make a case for it football-wise. If you were an elite football talent, you couldn't make that case. You couldn't convince your grandpa that was the better situation for you football-wise. Now you can pretty dang easily because of the season they just had, because of the turmoil at the University of Utah. So that's my number one concern with all this transfer portal stuff. Keanu Tanuvasa is getting phone calls today from everybody on that BYU staff. The same way Clegg did.
And they've got a compelling argument.
They do. And there's a lot going on at the University of Utah right now, but it's informative. It's a lesson for everyone who's watching this play out in college sports, not just at Utah, but everywhere. You have to wait and see what happens. I remember before I went on my trip, Cam Calhoun was a Ute and was telling everyone else to be a Ute.
Till I die, guys.
It was a bright talent that was going to be returning for the University of Utah. And my understanding of the Cam Calhoun situation, and I saw everyone like, hey, well, Utah's got to pay more. They're not doing enough. Not it. All right? There's still an expectation in the Utah football program, and you're not going to get me to back off of this. If you agree to something, if you sign a deal, you're in.
Yeah, you're committed.
Right? That's why the transfer portal, that's why it's so insane. There is such thing as too much of a good thing. There is too much flexibility and freedom for college athletes right now because it is possible for you to go in with leverage that you have earned by playing well and say, hey, if you want me to be here, I need this kind of money. And for that coaching staff to say, you're absolutely right. We love you. We're going to develop you. We're going to turn you into an NFL player. Here's what we're going to give you. And you say, yep, let's shake hands. I like that. Let's sign on whatever dotted line, the NIL. Like, I'm guaranteed this money. It's going to happen for me. This is not a UNLV situation where Matt Sluka's debating and they said they were going to give me this, they didn't give me that. Everyone who is at the University of Utah and was supposed to get X number of dollars got X number of dollars. All right? There's no dispute from any player that what he was promised was not delivered upon. But when you make that agreement and then you say, actually, it turns out I want more than that, I don't want this coaching staff or any coaching staff that's ever at the University of Utah to say, okay, sir, all right. Don't leave. Okay, well, I know that you just agreed to something, and I know we negotiated this already, and it was only however long ago, a week ago or 2 weeks ago or 5 weeks ago or 6 games ago before you went on a good streak or whatever. I'm now backing off that commitment. You're backing off that commitment, and I'm going to reach into this bottomless bucket of money you think I have, and I'm going to give you more. I don't want Utah to be that way. I don't want BYU to be that way. I don't want Colorado to be that way. I don't want anybody to be in a situation, because what I have talked about over and over and over again is how it is when you are under contract, when you're working in the real world, and that's what you're supposed to be preparing for as a college student, even a college athlete, right? Cam Calhoun, Keanu Tanuvasa, anybody, if they say, Coach, I agree to play for James, we'll just make it an even number, right? Just to round it out. This is not the real number for Cam Calhoun or for Keanu. They're more expensive than this.
Throwing stuff out here.
$100,000, right? They both deserve more. They both would get more from the NIL collective at the University of Utah. $100,000. I agree to play for $100,000 at the University of Utah next year. Awesome. Handshake. Take a selfie. Sign with the collective, whatever. We're happy. You're happy. Everyone's happy. Don't forget about your free truck and your free education. You got that too. Don't forget about Chef Pete cooking you up those great meals, helping you build that body. Don't forget about how committed we are to your success as a human being. And a week later, whoever that is comes in and says, guess what? I actually want more than that now. Do you want this to be the case? Do you want then the agreed upon amount to not be enough and for you as a coaching staff to say, all right, fine. Well, what do you want? I want double that. Okay, double. And then 3 weeks later, he comes back in. Actually, I want double of that double. All right. We just can't afford to lose you. We got to keep you here. I mean, this can't be the environment that any athletic department operates in. We need agreements to really be agreements. And I don't know. I have no firsthand knowledge of whether or not a dollar figure was agreed upon for Keanu Tanuvasa, and that's why he's decided to leave. But, look, James, in this business, a lot of times you work on a contract, right?
Yeah.
What do you think the response is going to be if I walk into our boss's office and say, I know I signed this contract back in July. I have decided today that it is no longer adequate. I want double my money.
Yeah. You'd get laughed out. Yeah. Or worse.
And legally, by the way, you can get laughed out of it.
Yes.
And that's where it's different in college sports.
We see it in pro sports too, to a certain degree. It's even more so in these NIL deals.
It's more so,
it's way more so. But we see, hey, I signed this 6 weeks ago, but I was the best player in the league for, in these past 6 weeks. So I want this much more. It's like, and then we've seen a lot of programs in college go, all right, we'll give you more. And that's why players like Cam Calhoun and others have been able to say, you know what, I'm going to try this too.
Look,
at my university.
Cam Calhoun, if you seal the rivalry game by making the pick that went through your hands, if you make that catch,
you have some leverage
if
there.
you pull down that interception and you are the reason you made the play that beat BYU and pulls off that upset and redeems a season that is otherwise unredeemable, if you make that play, Cam Calhoun, I will sit on these airwaves and I will say, Utah better damn well give him what he needs. But you didn't make that play.
Yeah. And
do I still think you're a good player? Do I still think you want him in the building? Absolutely, yes. But it's the same thing with the whole Brock Purdy and the 49ers situation. Is Brock Purdy really good? Yeah, he is. Do I think they should pay him $50 million a year to stick around? No, I don't.
Well, I mean, not if he's just John Stockton out there.
No, stop it. Don't you dare.
Oh, I'm sorry. Booger McFarland just took over the mic. No, like, seriously, though, that's the other thing. As good as Cam Calhoun was, and he was a really good player for Utah this last year, he wasn't nearly good enough for the program to say, you know what, you're right. Let's double or whatever number you're asking for more than what we agreed upon.
Look, you have
just to keep you here.
I mean, if your job as a coach, by the way, is not just to win football games, if we believe this at all, and it is a big if now in 2024, if part of your job as a college football coach is to help develop these individuals into quality young men, it is also part of your job to say, hey, you agreed to something. You signed with us, with our collective. I don't know how legally binding that stuff is, but like you said, yes, we shook hands on this, and you said you were happy. And you went so far as to make fun of other people for leaving. That's how happy you were with this. And now you have changed your mind. What changed your mind? Is it money? Is it a program that you wanted to get their attention when you were a high school kid? Now finally you have their attention? Is it somebody, your best friend left the team? You loved being with Carson Ryan, and Carson Ryan's headed to BYU, so now maybe you want to be with – like, what is it? If you just let – if you let the individuals that you've made these agreements with back out of these agreements willy-nilly, like regardless of timing, whenever, I just can't get on board with that level of disorganization in college football or basketball or volleyball or whatever.
Yeah, that's not, as you were alluding to, that's not helping them become good young men. That's not helping them become good men the rest of their lives if you're gonna allow that sort of thing to happen. It really isn't. Like, if you made a commitment, you've made a commitment. I'm with you. I would like the coaching staff of my favorite team, if I'm a Utah football fan, I would like for my coaching staff and my head coach to hold people to those kinds of commitments.
And look,
I'd like that.
I'm not on a high horse here, all right? I have made agreements and then regretted that agreement and then backed out of that agreement.
Yeah.
All right? I have committed
no
to something.
Perfect.
I got a tattoo and had it removed and covered up, all right?
Yeah.
Like, that we've all backed off of things, but like, this is insanity, and it's not just because it's at Utah. And I'm not trying to pick on Cam Calhoun. Or I'm not trying to pick on Keanu Tanuvasa. Like, this is an existential threat to college football, and it's not just because you're on the wrong side of it. Utah, in a lot of ways, is on the right side of this right now, all right? Because Utah is in a position where some of the guys that they have convinced to come to the University of Utah probably looked their coach in the eye and said, I'm happy here. I want to stay here. You guys gave me a Honda Civic, which is the best you can do at, whatever mid-major university. So when I ask the question, is the transfer portal a net gain, a net negative, a net loss for the University of Utah right now? I honestly, James, when I put that tweet out, either late last night or early this morning, can't remember when I did it, I was ready to sit down and make the case for you that even losing Cam Calhoun, even losing Carson Ryan, even losing Sione Fotu, these guys are good players. Even losing Simote Pepa, I was ready to sit down and tell you, hey, this is a net gain for Utah because they got Devin Dampier, who's a better quarterback than they had in the room. And that's the most important position. I had the notes. You can look at my notes. I had it laid out in here. I was going to sit here for 15 minutes and tell you why that is the transfer that matters. That is the one, because I was operating under the assumption that the Keanu Tanuvasas of the world were committed and were staying. Because I saw I saw the Fano, I saw the Lomu, I saw the Smith Snowden, I saw the Cam Calhoun, I saw the Keanu Tanuvasa. We all saw it. These guys saying, I'm a Utah man am I. The lyrics of the song say, and will be till I die. These are subtweeting everybody. They're sending a message. I am here. I am a Ute. And now, I guess my most sincere hope here is that this is a leverage play, which sounds so disgusting. Keanu Tanuvasa, fan favorite. Everybody loves the dude. If this is a leverage play, You know how risky that is? Your reputation is you are the guy that wags your finger at everyone else and says, how dare you not be loyal to this program just because we had a rough year. And now you're in the transfer portal. And guess what? It's a business decision, and I want him to be successful in life. I don't know if he signed anything and then backed out of it. I don't know. But I do know that Cam Calhoun had agreed to something with the University of Utah. And then he decided that was inadequate, and that when he came back and he said, I want more, they balked at it, which I don't think is the wrong reaction. And he ends up at Alabama. And guess what? Nobody, there's not a single college football fan on the planet that in the moment, on face value, says, oh, that's a bad situation for him. Like he's at Alabama now. But again, find me the list of players who have left the University of Utah football program and it has worked out better for them elsewhere. They're not that many.
It's not a long list.
But if this many guys keep coming or keep leaving, eventually that list is going to grow. And last thing I want to say on this before we get Alex Markham on the show. Every person who is not with the University of Utah right now, because of the backdrop of the end of the season, every person who is not with the University of Utah next year for whatever reason, whether they are a coach, whether they are in the player personnel department, whether they are a player, every single person, there's going to be a tiny little question in the back of folks' mind. Would that person be there? That person who is not here now, would that person be here if a different decision was made by Kyle Whittingham regarding his retirement? Everybody has to have at least an inkling of that question in the back of their mind now because of how convoluted that whole deal got. How non-transparent the communication was. Again, how difficult the whole, well, did you lose out on the coaching, the offensive coordinator hire you wanted with Arbuckle because of money, or was it because he didn't want to work for a certain guy, but he didn't want to work for another guy? Now you have to ask that question about all these players too. I hate it. But the transfer portal, if you even remove your emotional attachment to Utah, if you just pull that away, the transfer portal is one of those, this was intended to be a good thing, and we got too much of that good thing, and now it is a lawless wasteland where ultimately the Oregon Ducks and the Alabama Crimson Tide and the money makers and the power players are going to continue to reap the benefits. 877-353-0700. Text me which of the players that Utah has lost into the transfer portal surprises or hurts you the most. You can tweet me the answers as well at Real OC Sports and participate in the poll. We'll give you the results at the end of the show today because then I'm going to send you off to Spence and the drive and then, of course, into your holiday plans. But is the transfer portal right now for Utah net positive, net negative, or a net neutral? At Real OC Sports to give me your answer. Alex Markham next on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. We continue our conversation about the transfer portal and its effect not only on Utah, but on college football in general. Utah insider Alex Markham, friend of the program, joins us. First of all, happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Alex, how are you?
I'm good, buddy. Happy holidays. How you doing?
Doing great. As a Utes insider brought to us by Metro Elevator, Utah's preferred vertical transportation experts, the poll question I put up today, transfer portal right now for Utah, net positive, net negative, or net neutral? What do you think?
You know, they've done a good job with some of the positions, but I'm still going to go net neutral because, you know, when it comes to it, I mean, there's a lot of positions that they're doing stuff with that I feel are just depth plays. You know, and I mean, it definitely hurt losing one of the top wide receivers in the portal after he committed, signed, and then backed out and apparently signed with Colorado. But you know, getting the quarterback position solidified was awesome, and then you know, also, you know, with getting Parker recently, that was big too. Other than I don't think people understand that you know, Mike Mitchell's actually a loss, even though he didn't do much this year because of his injury.
Yeah, I think that it's hard. We get into this mode where production is the thing that you pay most attention to, and you're like, well, he didn't have a lot of stats this year, so if he didn't produce stats, then he didn't. It's not a loss. Sometimes those stats don't come because of injury. Sometimes those stats aren't there because there's just somebody. It's a crowded room in front of you or whatever, and the pipeline, the depth, is the thing that the transfer portal is destroying for not just Utah but for everyone. Where you know there's no patience in college football anymore.
There's not.
Even if your opportunities are limited by an injury, and you yourself know, hey, there's nothing I could have done about that. There's nothing the coaching staff could have done about that. It's just a bad situation. And now here you are, where you're making new decisions for yourself based on stuff that was outside of your control and everyone's control.
Yeah, it's nuts. You know, kids have quick triggers with things nowadays. You know, and then doesn't help that, you know, it's really weird how the inner workings of everything goes with the transfer portal, right? You know, a lot of times people want to sit back and blame schools and stuff like that, which, yeah, I mean, granted, there's schools that go behind the scenes or, you know, try to just talk to, you know, extensions of the family and so on. But the crazy thing that not enough people are talking about nowadays is, you know, there's wannabe agents out there, handlers, whatever the heck you want to call them, that literally just wake up and decide one day, hey, I've got some connections. I'm going to reach out. I'm going to see what this guy's potential going rate is worth. And then, you know, he's not in the portal, but I'm going to reach out to him, tell him, hey, you know, I can get you this, but I'm going to take this percentage, you know. And it's an ugly world of college football now. That's, you know, it's not just hitting Utah, it's hitting every team. And it's unfortunate. You know, there's no guardrails to anything, and it's weird because it's just like you feel like you're seeing it even worse this year, and maybe it's just because, you know, it hasn't hit Utah as bad until this year, that it's kind of being seen more. But yeah, I don't know.
I mean, that's absolutely why, because you're insulated by by your own success from the transfer portal, right? Because even if another team comes, like Dalton Kincaid, very famously, was offered a big old bag of money to go to Alabama. And Dalton Kincaid had the lifestyle, the package, the situation he wanted at Utah. So for him, even Alabama wasn't a compelling enough case to depart the program. Utah was winning. He was part of Pac-12 championship teams. He was part of, I mean, he was a legend here because of the fact that the team was winning. A lack of success on the field insulates you from this. Doesn't protect you completely, but it does insulate you from this. So a down year opens you up to all of this. It makes you incredibly vulnerable. And I guess the question I have, knowing that, is does it force you then to have back-to-back down years? Because your player retention gets affected by one bad year, and now it becomes that much harder to have a good rebound year.
Yeah, you know, I mean, Utah's seen the last 2 years. I mean, even though they've had really quality depth, you know, it can still get hit and hammered, and, you know, then you're struggling, right? You know, Tanavasa jumping in the portal today, which it's a big blow, right? And especially from a leadership standpoint, but at the same time too, Utah always figures a way with the defensive tackles, you know. the Cam Calhoun one's more of a concern for me because, even though Utah always figures things out with the cornerback position, just feels like to me they've got a whole bunch of guys that are depth plays in there right now that could fill in for them, And so, yeah, I mean, you do kind of start running that risk. And, all of a sudden you could possibly even start looking at the portal pickups that you guys that you've had, right? And it's like, okay, well, this was great when we had this and this. Now this is gone. Like, how do we pivot? What's going on? It's just, man, it's the crazy world we live in. College football does not feel like college football anymore. And man, I don't even know what to think of it.
Alex Markham, Utah Insider from Rivals, our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking about the transfer portal and its effect on Utah, but on all of college football right now. So this, I think, is the thing that makes the game so tough for the old school coaches, the guys that have been in their jobs for 20 years, like Kyle Whittingham has. And obviously he's been a football coach for longer than 20 years, but he's an old school individual. And it was only 3-4 years ago that you had to talk money with players, at least legally, at all. And even in that time, we've seen the slippery slope get slipperier and slipperier to where now you presumably can reach an agreement with a player, feel like he's happy, you're happy, everyone's happy, and then he gets that phone call you were alluding to, or he runs into that family friend that you were just talking about, and now you have to have that conversation all over again, and potentially you have to give him more money, you have to give him a better situation, you got to offer him something new, and I haven't heard Coach Witt say this. It's not like we're best friends, but I've known the man long enough to know that is not something that jives well with his personality. Handshake, official signage, whatever the deal is, if you agree to something with Kyle Whittingham, you agree to it. He doesn't seem like the type who's going to be like, okay, yeah, I will throw away that work we did last week and let's find you something better. Can he be expected to adapt to something like this environment that we're living in right now?
I mean, you hope, right? I mean, that's one of the reasons why, as good of a coach as Kyle is, there are people surrounding the program that have felt like he's seen certain things coming, tried to do what he could to adjust to it, and just hasn't fully adjusted, right? And so that's why you're starting to see kind of some of the detractors where, like, there's people that want Morgan in the head coach position now.
Okay,
right?
I'm not trying to interrupt you, but
yeah.
Is Morgan Scalley the kind of guy who's going to be like, okay, yeah, you're right, we did agree to this last week, but I mean, there's more similarities between Morgan and Kyle than there are differences. Now, Morgan's younger, he's energetic, he's probably a little bit more charismatic for some of these young guys, I imagine, but I can't imagine that this sits well with Morgan Scalley either. He's not yet the head coach. He doesn't have to, but like, he's not the type of guy that if you make an agreement with him, you can come to him next week and just say, never mind, I want more, and have him be happy about it. Like, I mean,
for sure.
If Kyle is too inflexible, is Morgan that much more inflexible, or that much more flexible, I should say?
It's gonna be something that's just gonna rub anybody wrong in this situation, just because, I mean, everybody's so used to kind of what you've been talking about, right? Just the question is Kyle more the Nick Saban type where, he just gets tired of it, can't fully adjust to it, even though he sees what's coming? Or can he make those changes? We just haven't fully seen that yet, in my opinion. Morgan, I've been told, is that type that can kind of see things a little bit better and pivot and adjust to things. Now, at the same time, too, people can say that all they want. He hasn't proven that yet, right? So we can only go by, how people feel just from his personality and interacting with him on a daily basis, and then also kind of seeing what's going on with Kyle, right? But kind of going back to some of that stuff that you were talking about as well, like I said, it's nuts. And I know you and me were kind of texting about this earlier, but, you've got like Calhoun and Tanavasa that sit back and they agree to their stuff. They get everything out of the way. They get everything signed, throw out those posts, and then they're out, right? As soon as one of these situations comes, from there, even if they were to come back, Utah has stuff set up in place, and I can't remember the exact specifics to it, but it's almost like a salary cap between each position, right? Like we can only spend up to this much on this position, and so on and so forth. And so that's where some of those things get murky. And then at the same time too, if they come back and if they start renegotiating with those guys, that opens up a whole can of worms for everybody else that would have already negotiated, right? The other thing on top of all this stuff that's just absolutely nuts and bonkers is the fact that guys can go on transfer portal visits, commit, sign, and the stuff they're signing means absolutely nothing. They can go on a trip the next week, sign again, and again, that's still not binding. Other teams can still go after them, but it's just there needs to be some kind of guardrails in place where when they sign, and there's no getting out of it unless there's like some mutual thing to it. It's just the world of college football has just gotten insane.
Alex Markham for another minute or two here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Look, there's a lot of reason. It's understandable why people feel pretty pessimistic given the news today of like a beloved player like Keanu Tanuvasa and the potential of someone like Cam Calhoun. But you and I have not yet had an opportunity to talk about Devin Dampier and what the new offensive look could be for Utah with him running the offense and obviously his coordinator being hired by Utah and coming together from New Mexico. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a little reductive, but if this guy is the dude that we think he can be, that his film shows he potentially could be with a few tweaks and adjustments, then the rest of this stuff is probably not that much of a topic of conversation once we get to next fall, because the most important position on the field, where Utah had so many struggles this year because of the injury to Cam Rising, is quarterback. Tell me what you think about the ceiling for Devin Dampier in a Utah offense.
It's special. It's really special. I mean, now granted, you take a look at his stats and you see the 12 touchdown, 12 interception ratio. That's not great, right? But when he gets around elevated talent and everything, what can he do with it? And to me, the best way to describe him is, with his elusiveness and still making plays happen and everything, it's almost a version of Noah Fafita, not as good of a passer yet, but a version of Noah Fafita, but that can run it. And something like that is extremely dangerous for any defense to have to prepare for, because it keeps you on your toes. With that as well, it also, tells the receivers and tight ends like, hey, like, look, I got to run my route and I got to be aware to break it off and find an opening, because at any given time, like the play's not dead, as opposed to what we would have seen the last couple of years here, and so there's a lot that Utah can do with keeping teams on their toes, and it's gonna benefit all the pass catchers, and I mean even the running backs, man. Just the fact of having him as such a running threat. I mean, everybody saw it with Cam. Devin's just that much more. The fact that he ran for over 1,000 yards this year, and so it's going to be fun to cover. It's going to be fun to watch. It's a lot more of a simplistic offense too, where in years past, Utah gets some pretty talented guys in here, but it would take them longer to learn the playbook. Now you got an offense that's a lot more plug and play, and you can get the best athletes on the field with Dampier, and it's going to cause some headaches with the Big 12 for sure.
That's Alex Markham, our Utah Insider, brought to you by Metro Elevator. Appreciate your time and your insights, obviously, for all of 2024, at least since July where I took over. But
thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, bro.
So, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to Alex Markham, to all of you out there listening. We're gonna talk about the passing of a sports legend next, but I'm gonna keep it light, okay? Because it's Christmas time, and I want us to be having fun. And it's a good story about my lone personal interaction with Ricky Henderson next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700. Not quite, James. Is this a
Oh.
great Christmas song? Absolutely it is.
I saw you smile. I got some hope for a second
You were
there.
getting James, we're playing a little sweepstakes. James is trying to figure out, I've said, are you playing the best Christmas song of all time? And he's like, I don't even know.
I had a sneaking suspicion it was going to be Last Christmas, Wham, that I played going into Alex Markham's segment there. But you didn't react at all to Wham. I was like, wow.
I'll give you a hint. It is from several decades ago. It's way back. You get in the way back machine for this one. Okay. So this is a modern hit and classic. It's wonderful. Good job.
You had a bit of a smile there. I was like, is this
love
one it?
No, it's almost there.
How can you not like Mariah Carey this time of year? Right?
The voice of an angel. I wish I had never seen her episode of MTV Cribs because she was so unlikable on that thing. But in any case, beautiful voice. Sean O'Connell Show continuing here on a Monday before we send you off to a holiday break. We got best of shows tomorrow and on Christmas Day. Is that the plan?
No, it's Christmas. We have NFL doubleheader.
Oh, that's right.
Westwood won, yeah. But tomorrow we'll do best of, and I think you convinced me. I think it should be a year-end best of because the next Tuesday, New Year's Eve, we're only going to have a half hour of the Sean O'Connell Show because of Utah basketball, and we'll play another interview during that half hour. But this is like our last chance. Tomorrow's our last chance to do a year best of. So okay. I think we'll do a year best of. I was originally planning on just recent stuff.
The last 2 weeks without me best of. Cool.
Real
cool.
Yeah, best of the year. It's all Zachariah the last 2 weeks. So strange.
Oh, that would be so mean and probably accurate.
No, we'll have we'll bring back a Rising report maybe.
Oh, hey. Oh, that's just nostalgic.
Some of the other maybe some Gordy interviews.
Just a little twist the
like
knife for people of what might have been, James. Wow, that's not in the Christmas spirit. So I saw this over the weekend. All-time stolen bases leader in Major League Baseball history, Ricky Henderson, has passed away. Iconic player, personality, all of it, right? Everyone that was in the Bay Area especially has Ricky Henderson stories.
Just in time for Zachariah not to be doing a show, too. He would have been awesome on this segment.
He actually, I don't know if he could have done it. He loves Ricky.
I can imagine. Maybe he'd be too overcome by it. We are doing Zachariah Hour Thursday this week since the holidays on Wednesday. So we'll have to get his thoughts on Thursday.
He'll cry. Spoiler alert, he's going to cry. My older brother was an Oakland A's fan. Mark McGwire was his favorite player. And my grandparents lived in the Bay Area when we were young. So my grandma is, as I've said before, is a big reason why I became a sports fan like I am and helped me select the teams that I loved, especially the San Francisco 49ers. So did the same thing for my older brother. We went out there to visit Grandma and Grandpa, and we went to an A's game. And my grandma was the best trooper ever. She's 4'10", okay? But just like the trooper and a huge fan. She's like, all right, we're going to get autographs. We're going to find these players. We went down. I don't know how it happened, James. I was like, I want to say 11. We went into the belly of the beast in the Coliseum. Like we were somehow, this is a long time ago when security was a lot more lax, especially if you're an old lady and 2 kids, I guess. But we were in like personnel only areas. And it was getting late. We were well after the game. This is an hour plus after the game has ended. And we still haven't found Mark McGwire. We still haven't found that golden goose autograph that my older brother wanted. Okay? He was desperate to get Mark McGwire's autograph. And time was running out. We were going to have to call it pretty soon. We had the optimism and precociousness of youth. But, even we could realize, there's not people here anymore.
Yeah, it's probably not happening.
We're not going to find these players. And somehow we came around a corner, and again, we're in the concourse between the locker room and where they go to their players-only parking lot. And lo and behold, Mark McGwire and Ricky Henderson. And so, of course, my older brother is just overjoyed. And he's just like, oh my gosh, Mark, can I get an autograph? And both of them, you could tell, are just like, how the hell did these kids get down here? They were just ah. And my grandma, the adult in the situation, was just like, guys, we know that you're busy. we've been waiting for a really long time. We've been running all around the stadium. You're his favorite player. Can you give him an autograph?" And so Mark was a good sport about it. And I let my brother have that, right? I was just like, "That's your favorite player. I'm not going to bother Mark McGwire." But Ricky Henderson is right here, right? Yeah. And I'm like, "Ricky, I had an A's hat I was wearing at the game, one of my brother's hats, because, I'm in an A's game." So I'm like, Ricky, will you sign this? Can you sign this?" And he's like, "Am I your favorite player?" And I just froze because I'm like an 11-year-old kid. And
this is this mom and dad told me not to lie, Ricky. I'm sorry.
And then he laughed and he signed it. And then they took off. And it was like my brother flew into Salt Lake today. He might be listening right now. That's probably his best sports memory ever.
It's amazing.
From childhood. And Ricky Henderson, he did not want to see us. Okay, we were not where we were supposed to be. They were just trying to get out of there and go home, but stopped and gave an autograph to some random kid who's not even an A's fan. And he probably could see that by the way that I reacted when he asked if I was his favorite player.
That's so good.
But I still have that thing somewhere.
You got by Ricky Henderson in that moment. But awesome of them both to do that. And shout out to your grandma for clearly conning everyone into letting you walk all around the restricted areas of the stadium.
I think my grandma's diminutive stature is disarming to these big, powerful athletes, right? Because she is tiny. I mean, I
don't know what it was. I just pictured someone that short, and you heard me audibly laugh. You said she's 4'10", and I just went, "Oh my gosh!" You just don't see people quite that short, so I'm just picturing.
I think,
and you're a pretty tall guy. I'm just picturing. I mean, you weren't an adult at that time, but I'm picturing her with you and your brother.
But yeah, I was like a head taller than her when I was a fifth grader, and so these grown men are probably just like, "What is this freak show that is coming up?" But I think that helped us get access to some of the stuff we got access to, because my grandma was she's so little that people are caught off guard, and they're just like, "All right, you're awesome, lady." Anyway, it worked. We got to take a break. College football playoff has expanded. First weekend in the books. We got some fun games and fun matchups out of that. We'll discuss it with National College Football Insider Adam Rittenberg, who joins us next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700. You're getting closer, James. You're getting closer to the greatest Christmas song ever.
I mean, you said decades ago.
You are so close.
Oh, man.
You're on like the right vibe even.
Okay,
I'm trying to give you more hints. Sean O'Connell Show here on a Monday ahead of your Christmas break. Hopefully everyone's gotten their shopping done for the holidays. Adam Rittberg stops by to talk all things college football. Adam, welcome to the show again. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. How about you?
Doing all right. Coming off of that first weekend of an expanded college football playoff, I was actually surprised at how many people decided to hot take the thing and be bothered that, the games, some of the games didn't work out or weren't as competitive as they thought they would be. The idea that big-time college football playoff games being played on campuses and everyone in the country still had a dog in the fight, regionally at least. I thought it was absolutely spectacular. What was your reaction to that opening weekend?
No, I thought it was great too. I was at Notre Dame on Friday, and really fun atmosphere around campus and hours leading up to the game against Indiana. I mean, you always want better games. I mean, that's what we all are hoping for. But as you've seen in pretty much any playoff model, oftentimes we don't get good games. If you go back and look at the history of a college football playoff at 4 teams, a lot of the semifinals were blowouts. And so, yes, I mean, Indiana, I thought they would be more competitive. SMU really didn't give themselves much of a chance because of the interceptions. But, just to kind of invalidate it and say, well, it would have been so much better had 3-loss Alabama got in or 3-loss Ole Miss. You really don't know that. I mean, listen, I'm a guy who cares more about who you beat than who you lost to. But at some point, who you lost to has to matter, especially for a team like Alabama. And I just think that there are certain things. If you're going to prop up the regular season, you can't just say, well, it doesn't matter that they lost to Oklahoma, and it doesn't matter that they lost to Vanderbilt, or even in South Carolina's case, that they lost to the other teams they were competing against. I mean, sorry, they lost to the wrong teams. That keeps you out some years, and that's what happened in this particular year. So I really don't have any grievances towards who made it in. And I just would suggest people go back and look at the history of this event. And there's been more blowouts than really memorable games.
So should we look at this and say, well, this is about Notre Dame and Ohio State and these teams being pretty dang good, rather than deciding to pick apart the resume of a team that a week ago we decided belonged in that position, but now with the benefit of hindsight and them having a couple of bad performances and maybe even at least in some cases, like you said, just turnover situations. Like, it's not like in college football you never get on the wrong side of the turnover margin and that ruins what is otherwise a good team. Like, I look at it, I say, I expect that some of these playoff teams, especially the favorites, the higher seeds of these playoff games, are just going to look like they're really dang good teams. I don't know. I think I'm with you. I think we're probably on the same page, and I didn't look at it and say, well, that shows me that those people didn't belong there.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think in each case is a little bit different. I think, the SMU case to me is really hard to make for even though they didn't play well against Penn State, because let's say Clemson doesn't make a 56-yard field goal and SMU wins in overtime. That's not a dramatically different outcome in terms of how they looked in the ACC championship game. Let's say that happens and we game it out. They have the same exact performance against Penn State. Are people having the same takes? Oh my God, the ACC champion shouldn't be part of this. So either you expand the playoff to be more diverse and to incorporate more leagues and in some cases more regions of the country. I know when you and I were doing Pac-12 radio, we talked about that for years, how what's the point of having a playoff that's designed in many cases to exclude a whole region of the country? You got to live with this. So I'm cool with it. I'm actually cool with the fact that there are different pathways to the playoff based on the league that you're in. And if you don't like it, go play in another league. Like if Lane Kiffin doesn't like how hard it is to make the playoff in the SEC, feel free to go coach in the ACC or the Big 12 where it's supposedly easier. Or you stay in the SEC and it's going to be harder for you than it is going to be for Indiana or SMU or a Big 12 team. That's just the way it is. So again, I don't have a huge issue there. You could say with Indiana, listen, they had one chance during the regular season because of the way the schedule fell to really prove themselves against a strong team, and they didn't do it. And then they certainly struggled to get any traction in the Notre Dame game. I still don't have a huge issue with them being in, but that to me is a stronger argument than keeping SMU out because they lost in the last-second field goal after winning all of their regular season games in the conference.
I am wholly convinced that the national championship winner is going to come out of the 4 teams that got a bye in this first round. I just think that asking someone to go on a run against high-quality competition for 4 weeks in a row is too much, I think. But did you see anything from any of the winners in this opening weekend that made you say, all right, they're a real national championship contender. They might be able to pull this off?
Yeah, Ohio State's that team. I mean, Ohio State, if they perform like they did against Tennessee, they may not be beaten in the whole thing. And they obviously have to stay healthy. And you mentioned it, OC, like, we're already seeing injuries pile up from that first round. Unfortunately, Riley Mills from Notre Dame, their top defensive lineman in terms of sacks and tackles for loss. You had a knee injury against Indiana. He's out for the rest of the playoffs, unfortunately. And that could certainly happen for teams that are exposed to more high level, very physical games. And we're hoping certainly that these teams can stay healthy throughout. But yeah, I mean, Ohio State, again, if they play like that at the line of scrimmage, they can beat Oregon and they can beat Texas or anyone else that's really in their path. I mean, they're that talented, and we saw them perform a lot closer to their talent level in the Tennessee game than we did against Michigan or in many other games. So I think Ohio State has that ability. It's interesting to see what happens with the Georgia, Boise State, Penn State, Notre Dame quadrant, because we just don't know where Georgia's at, having to play a different quarterback. They've had some close calls even with Carson Beck. So, what type of Georgia are we going to see against Notre Dame? And then if they're able to get past Notre Dame, how are they going to perform against Penn State or Boise State? So I think there is actually quite a few possibilities with the teams that won in the first round, but the one that looked national championship worthy to me was Ohio State.
Boise State will take on Penn State. You probably have to count me among the doubters of James Franklin. I didn't think it would be a Boise State Penn State matchup, but Ashton Genty has been one of the best players in the entire country, certainly the best running back in the country. Is he going to be enough against a Penn State team that is, silencing doubters?
Yeah, I think he has a chance to be. They're going to need to have Maddox Madsen and the rest of that offense play well, and they're going to need to get Penn State's offense disrupted. I actually thought SMU had a pretty good game plan defensively against Penn State, and they just took themselves out of it with the turnovers. So if Boise State can take care of the ball, make Penn State drive the field, they'll have to have a good defensive plan for Tyler Warren, and I'm sure Spencer Danielson and his staff will be able to do that. Penn State's very physical along the line of scrimmage. They're good at linebacker. They're pretty good on the D line outside of obviously having an elite player in Abdul Carter. So just curious to see how Boise State will handle a bigger physical team like Penn State. They did a nice job against Oregon early in the year, but it's been a while since they've seen bodies like the ones they'll see from the Nittany Lions out in Arizona.
Adam Rittberg, my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking all things college football, including the expanded college football playoff. As you alluded to, you and I used to do some Pac-12 radio together, and part of that was just talking about, if you get any team in this thing, it's going to be a one-bid situation, and no one gives any respect to the league. How are people treating and going to treat Arizona State, given they are the lone Big 12 representative?
Well, I think if you've studied Arizona State and how they've played, especially the last half of the season, I think that they're afforded a lot of respect. I mean, they have performed at a really high level on both sides of the ball. Cam Scadaboo is one of the more exciting offensive players in the country. There's quite a few running backs in this playoff that people should be watching. Obviously, Ashton Genty's one of them. Cam Scadaboo's one. Jeremiah Love, a guy I'm writing about for tomorrow for ESPN from Notre Dame, is another one. So it's a really cool group. And then Sam Levitt, I think since he came back from injury at quarterback, has played at a really, really high level. So, again, Arizona State earned its way here. They were dominant in the Big 12 championship game. They shouldn't be playing with a lot of pressure, but it's a new stage. How are they going to perform against a really talented Texas team that flexed its offensive muscles a bit against Clemson and has a very, very talented defense, really top to bottom? So, again, they haven't seen a team like Texas for a while, but I don't think they need to go into that game with a lot of pressure, because who expected them to be here outside of their locker room?
I'd love to get a truth serum and everyone inside that locker room, like in week 6, and ask them if they even thought this was a possibility, because that's part of the magic of this season. It just sort of started happening for them. And obviously they did a great job of seizing on it. And, Dillingham is such a great story, as we've talked about before, but it's been truly a magical season at Arizona State. And even if they don't make it out of this round, I'm going to talk about this one for years.
No, me too. I mean, and there's a number of teams. Again, SMU, yes, it wasn't the way they wanted to end it, but imagine, getting to the college football playoff in your first year in the ACC, or Indiana, just even being there on Friday. I can't believe I'm watching Indiana in the college football playoff. Same with Boise State. Their path has been, a lot longer, because we've talked about them as a potential playoff team. But even back in the old BCS days, back in 2011, Boise State was a team that a lot of us thought had the potential to make the college football playoff, 2010, 2011. So now they're here, and this is such a cool opportunity. Again, I just look at the playoff very differently, OC. To me, the whole 12 best thing, and it should be that no matter what, it feels very much like someone who wants to create a playoff in August and doesn't want really a lot of diversity in the playoff. Like, they just want to pick the brands that are accustomed to seeing and see them duke it out. Like, to me, that's not that interesting. I want to see diversity. I want to see different regions. And think about it. You got a team from Idaho. You got a team from Arizona. You got a team from Oregon. You obviously got some traditional teams like Ohio State, and Penn State is in the playoff, and obviously the South is represented with Texas and Georgia. Like, this is what a national playoff and a national sport is supposed to be. If you don't like it, then change it, and they probably will change it. But I think that the spirit of expanding a playoff is reflected in the types of teams that have made it.
We spent a significant amount of time on the show today talking about the transfer portal, and obviously through the lens of Utah football, because we're the home of the Utes here on ESPN 700. But, one bad season can then be compounded if you don't insulate your roster, and if you lose too much talent, then it gets harder and harder to have a rebound season. And it's an insane environment transfer-wise, whether you're on the bad side of it, on the good side of it, whatever. It's just an unrecognizable product to what it used to be, and we kind of saw this coming when the NCAA removed the restrictions and didn't put any guardrails in place. But is there any way that this genie goes back in the bottle, like even to a minor extent, the combination of transfer portal and NIL and the free-for-all that is college football?
Not unless you start having contracts, multi-year contracts, which, again, I think would benefit a lot of people in terms of, knowing what your roster is going to look like, having an agreed upon term. Again, you're on contract, I'm on contract. I know when my term ends, and there's going to be a negotiation at the end, and you hope you're brought back for more money, or maybe you go your separate ways. But at least there's an understanding of how long I'm on the team. And right now, there's not. These players have such power that they can be on the team for as long or as short as they want to in many cases. And that's why you have, the constant churn of the rosters. And so, given the losses that have happened legally, I just don't see any other way that this stabilizes unless I think some of the money will stabilize through revenue sharing, but I just don't know if the movement is going to stabilize until there's a contract type setup where, both sides agree that this player is is on our team for 2 years or 3 years, or if it's 1 year, at least you know that after 1 year that player can go his separate way and we can move on, or we can try to do a new deal. It's just a much cleaner way of roster construction.
How momentous was the ruling on Diego Pavia not counting his junior college participation against him? JUCO has become such an afterthought with the way the transfer portal is now. But, I mean, if the slippery slope is slippery, could you say, well, JUCO doesn't count and neither does Group of Five play, or those FCS years didn't count against your eligibility?
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, I anything is possible because of the legal interpretations constantly being on the side of the athlete. I can't remember one, in the last 2 or 3 years where the schools or the NCAA, won a situation like this. So yeah, I mean, take your shot, right? If you're a FCS player, if you're, obviously there's some bylaws that might be a little bit harder to get around. I think Group of Five would be an especially hard thing to get around right now. But again, why not take a chance if you think you have a case and you obviously want to play longer at the highest level.
Adam Rittenberg for just another minute or two here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking about the changing landscape of college football. I don't know how much attention you've been able to pay to the craziness in Salt Lake City the last couple of weeks, but it wasn't clear whether Kyle Whittingham was going to come back or not, or the head coach in waiting, Morgan Scalley, would be given the official head coaching title this offseason. Obviously, that has been put on pause for now. Coach Witt is back, and that was about as much as they said about it. I'm back, and there's a little bit of indecision, a little bit of question mark there, and it's being interpreted a lot of different ways depending on where loyalties lie in this Utah fan base, especially coming off of the most difficult season in memory. I wanted to get your zoomed out kind of national view on what you think of this head coach in waiting situation, and no real clarity on how long Morgan Scalley will be waiting.
Right, yeah. I think as longer it went on, the likelier it seemed that Kyle Whittingham would return, and obviously we know that he's going to do that now. Is it reluctant? Is it the right time to move on? I think if they had the season that we all thought they would have and win the Big 12 and make the college football playoff, it would be the perfect time for a coaching transition. But because things went so far in the other direction, and you're having to rebuild an offensive staff, and you're obviously some roster changes, just like every team is going through. It put Utah in more of a vulnerable position, to actually compound that with a full-on head coaching change. And so, a lot of us, again, who've covered Coach Witt, selfishly would like to see him go out with a better season, and maybe they'll be able to do that next year. But I don't know if you can have it drag on a whole lot longer. I really thought this would be it going into the year. And I think, again, if it had been a better season on the field, we would be seeing Morgan Scalley as the head coach.
They did make a change at the offensive coordinator position. Jason Beck comes in, and several players from New Mexico followed him. Now, New Mexico was a very different team this year than they were a year ago, especially on the offensive side of the ball. What do you think of Dampier and the rest of the guys that Utah was able to get in the transfer portal?
Yeah, I really like the Jason Beck hire because he's a guy who has had success in multiple areas with quarterbacks, but obviously has a connection to the state of Utah, having been there at BYU with Bronco. And so I think this is a smart move to try to create. They need to do something differently there. It's unfortunately because of the injuries at quarterback, and especially the situation with Cam Rising, it just felt like the program was frozen on offense for too long. So you need to turn a page with a new coach, with a new group of personnel, and ultimately generate more success on that side of the ball, because it's been a rough watch, as I'm sure all the youth fans have seen here the last couple of years watching that offense, even though, again, overall, Andy Ludwig did a terrific job as OC there, and it really was the only consistent OC in Kyle Whittingham's career. So I think this is a move that should benefit Utah. Bringing in a guy who again knows the area, has a track record of success, and was able to bring some players with him.
Adam, thank you so much for your time and your perspective, as always. Love talking football with you. I hope you and the family enjoy the holidays.
You too, my friend. Thanks for having me.
That's Adam Rittenberg, ESPN college football insider, one of the best in the business. Known him for a long time. He is an encyclopedia of football knowledge and just always a gracious guest to have. So big thanks to Adam. All right. I want to talk a little bit more about the situation that Utah finds itself in the transfer portal, the good and the bad of it, obviously. What does it mean for, again, the college football playoff? That's what Utah is striving for. We thought that we'd be having that conversation this year. It is not happening. Will we be having it next year or the next year or the next year? It feels like those things get less and less likely the more pessimistic the news becomes. But we'll get into it a little bit more on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700. You are, James, you are so close.
Oh, there we go. Mic off. I thought so hard about it when you said it wasn't Blue Christmas by Elvis Presley with same vibe, and I'm like, okay. Bing Crosby. It's got to be Bing. It is Bing. Is it a Bing Crosby
It's
song?
Bing Crosby.
It's White Christmas, isn't it?
It's not.
Oh.
You got to remember, I have a certain affinity for a particular place. That's my favorite place to go.
Oh, yeah.
And
True.
that's probably influences my love
hello.
of this particular song.
Melakaliki Maka.
Melakaliki Maka.
I should have known. I should have known that.
But this is.
I didn't think about your affinity for Hawaii.
This is a wonderful song. Bing Crosby, the crooner voice of Bing Crosby, is Christmas for me.
See, I thought, okay, it's either this. If it's Bing Crosby, I thought it's either this. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas, or it's White Christmas because of the movie and how he's known for that song because of the movie. So and the play. So anyway,
phenomenal.
Melakaliki Maka.
This actually, like a childhood Christmas tradition. We would put up the tree. We'd decorate the tree. Back when the trees weren't pre-lit. Back in my day, before they had LED lights, you'd string the lights around the tree. You'd get your favorite ornaments. You put them on the tree, whatever. This is my parents would put on like the Bing Crosby Christmas album.
Yeah.
And so that is Christmas for me.
So good.
Well done. Sir. You've been a fantastic Christmas DJ.
I told you in the break that I got another classic that I already lined up for the last segment. That's kind of I'm vetoing your favorite. I'm being the boss in that for that song.
That's fine.
And so I wouldn't say it's my favorite Christmas song of all time, but I guess recently it's been a favorite. So that's what I got lined up for the next ones. That's why we're spoiling it early here.
In 15 minutes, I'm going to give you one of James's favorite Christmas movies, and we're all just going to have a good laugh about this one. It is. You put together a phenomenal list.
Thank you.
We'll get there. We'll get there. We'll have some fun with it. I am gonna because I've been off for 2 weeks. I do want to try to do a real sports talk show on my first day back at least. And the transfer portal has been a major topic of conversation for not just Utah football, but for college football in general. These past couple of weeks, especially with the rough season Utah had, the uncertainty around the future of Kyle Whittingham, and now the destabilized situation of Utah football, even though the answer has been given. He's back for 2025. We don't know how long the head coach in waiting, Morgan Scalley, is going to be waiting. We don't know how patiently he's waiting, although I have been told that has smoothed out and everything's good and it's business as usual and it's everyone putting their head down and trying to march through. From a player perspective, though, the freedom is there. They can explore opportunities. And there are a lot of teams, BYU being one of them, USC being one of them, that want to pick over what they perceive as a carcass of Utah football. They are the hyenas that are coming after what they think are vulnerable talents that they can lure away because of – go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, and speaking of – that is USC is one of the teams that's being reported as a likely landing spot for Keanu Tanavasa. So it's actively happening today.
There are a lot of teams, and those two are the ones I'm hearing the most from. That look, every team just wants good players, but those teams are the ones where it's just like, oh, if we can get somebody from Utah, that's even better. Because of what Utah did to embarrass us in past seasons. And, every one of these coaches and not just the coaches, but the GMs now that handle this stuff on their staff, the boosters that are involved in these NIL decisions, these are competitive people, right? And BYU wants to steal potential starters away from Utah. Why wouldn't they? Not only do you add talent to your own roster, but you can help to degrade the talent and the depth of a roster that you have to play every year moving forward. Colorado should want to take players from Utah. Arizona and Arizona State should want to take players from Utah. And that is the case. Talented players have options right now. I am graduated beyond my reluctance to be critical of the decisions made or the actions taken by college football players, because 5-10 years ago, you had to remind yourself, even when something boneheaded happened, you had to remind yourself that these are teenagers who are amateurs. Elite players in college football are not amateurs anymore. They are paid, highly compensated. The best ones make more money than I do. And I don't know why that makes you feel entitled to be critical of someone, but I guess it does, right? So I think it
sounds like you're jealous to me, OC.
there
Jeez.
is, look, there is jealousy there. There is jealousy that, like, I could even get someone to pay for my schooling, much less give me a few $100,000 on top of that.
I can imagine from ex-college football players like yourself, there's more of that than the rest of the guys who are talking heads like myself and other people that didn't play at that level, who didn't have that, hey, back when I played, we were doing this. We were scraping together our per diem. We were pulling our per diem to get McDonald's hamburgers on the road or whatever, versus now they're all making six figures in NIL, or a lot of them are. So I could see that being more of the case because you experienced it when pre-NIL, or others experienced it at a higher level than that. But like,
for me, it's like, it's whatever, right? Because I was not a good college player. But for guys that were great college players, right? I mean, Reggie Bush is clearly on the petty level now.
Yeah.
Where he's just like, I'm suing you guys. Yeah. Because if you're giving the money to these kids, they're not as good as I was. They didn't get wins like I got. You took my Heisman Trophy away from me. You did all this stuff. I'm suing you now. And they were ready to reinstate him at USC. They were ready to put Reggie back on the record books, etch his name on the side of the stadium. They were ready to give Reggie the welcome home. And he's like, no, I'm suing you now because I'm jealous that they get money that I was not allowed to get. And it makes a lot more sense for Reggie Bush.
Yes.
Because that's like, I look back, guess what? I got $0 as a college football player in this NIL era. You know how much money I would have? Also $0.
Yeah.
I would have better food because now the walk-ons are allowed to eat the food.
Yeah, and you can have coaches when you're on recruiting visits actually pay for your meal.
Yeah.
Now,
like the
rules are versus back then.
The rules are very slightly better.
If they pulled out their wallet, it's an NCAA violation back then.
The rules are very slightly better for the walk-ons of the world, but for the star players, it is a drastically different time and look, I wish Keanu Tanubasa the best ultimately, but he and many of these other players who profess loyalty and profess commitment, and then a couple of weeks later or a couple of days later or a week later, they are going to look back on that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever. Like, Keanu Tanubasa is going to cringe like hell when he 10 years from now reads back his transfer announcement. He's gonna look at that and just be like, oh, what was I doing? Why did I say that? And that's fine. It's just part of life. It's just part of maturing and growing and learning and realizing that you're not as cool as you think you are as you get older. Like that announcement, I consider myself a man of faith. That when you and everyone is doing this right now, but when you try to make it about that, when we all know it's not about that, that's something you're probably going to look back on and you're probably going to regret. But I'm not here to criticize that. I'm here to talk about the difficulty in rebounding now. It is harder to – if you're a new coach taking over and you're rebuilding like Kenny Dillingham did at Arizona State, that is easier now than it ever was. If you have the right strategy, the right coaching staff, the right NIL contributions, it's easier to rebuild now than it was 10 years ago because you had to go through the same old machine that everyone did, and you had to gradually reload players. And there was no chance, no matter how good of a recruiter you were, that you were going to get like 18 impact high school players or even JUCO players to really come in and change things around for you. Now, if you're trying to rebuild like Deion Sanders has done and Kenny Dillingham has done and several other coaches around the country have been able to do with their rosters. The new rule set lends itself to some success there. I submit to you that it's harder to rebound than it used to be.
Interesting.
Rebuilding, where it's a fresh start, it's a rip the Band-Aid off, it's a clean slate, easier now. Rebounding, where you've got guys that didn't like the way things went this year, that had felt some type of way about the amount of playing time they got, or the amount of playing time that their best friend got, or the play calling on one side of the ball or the other. You're now asking those guys to stay and be part of a rebound. It's not a rebuild at Utah. It's not. It's not a rebuild. You got your same coaches on the defensive side of the ball. You got your same head coach. You got your same facilities. You didn't rip the Band-Aid off anything except the offense. And, again, we're going to look back on that and evaluate it in 5 years and in 10 years, and maybe we'll say it ended up being a good thing, maybe not. A rebound at a place like Utah, where the resources are not unlimited and where the coach is relatively old school, is harder now than it was in previous years, where players, it was all in or in the way, and that meant what it was supposed to mean. If you wanted to rebound, you wanted to be part of a rebound after a tough season at the University of Utah, you wanted to rebound from a Pac-12 championship loss, okay, like 5 or 10 guys quit the team, 5 or 10 or 15 guys graduate from the team. You get a couple of transfers. They might have to sit out. They might not. You get JUCO guys. They don't have to sit out. You get a talented freshman. A Britton Covey comes in, and now you're off to the races, right? And you've rebounded from whatever the bad experiences was before under that old system. Rebounding was something you could pull off. It's harder now because everybody's in a bad season looking for greener grass. They're craning their eyes over every single fence. They're just like, oh, my gosh, it is tough around here. In the old system, you just dealt with it. It's like our parents and our grandparents did with their marriages. They got through the rough times. They didn't get divorced, and they just made it through. They didn't worry about the greener grass.
It's not a picnic anyway, people. Come on.
That's right. They watered their own grass until it was better, or they just suffered in silence.
They just accepted the brown and yellow grass that they got. Yeah.
And again, it's very. I think it's a good analogy because it's not necessarily.
I hadn't thought of it that way, but it works now that you say it.
It's not like I'm not in a position to tell you which way is better or worse. It's just the reality of where you're at now as a society and as a sports society. We're in a situation now where when you have a rough season at a place like Utah, who else at a place like Oklahoma State had a disastrous season this year, every one of those players, even the most loyal of those players, even the hardest core Oklahoma State Cowboy, is getting a couple phone calls and is at least casting a side eye to see who has greener grass.
They're all free agents. That's the other part of it. I always compare it to professional sports, right? But you're under contract in professional sports for multiple years, sometimes single-year deals, but a lot of these star players are multi-year deals. And we've seen in the NBA in particular forcing trades before their contract is over, but you don't have near as much player movement year to year in those professional sports like we've seen in college football, and it lends to what you're talking about, where it's like we have a year where we perform below expectations. Well, I'm a free agent, and the other schools know that too. Everyone's a free agent. Let me give them a call, see if they might want to change. And a lot of these guys are changing right now. Yeah.
And look, there's some important players that have departed the program, but let's not pretend that there are not important players who decided to stay and that there are not important players. Arguably the most important player, we'll see how it plays out, but potentially the most important player is someone who just arrived on campus, right? And I'm not telling you that Devin Dampier is off to win a Heisman Trophy in a new Utah offense, but he was a dynamic player, and you didn't have that after Cam Rising went down, you didn't have what you needed at the quarterback position. Maybe now you do. It's a strong maybe, but it's an optimistic outlook. So the transfer portal world, we can gnash our teeth about it and we can pull our hair out about it. You're trying to rebound instead of rebuild, and I actually think it's harder to rebound now than it ever was. If any coaching staff could do it, if any program can do it, it's this one. But we're going to have to wait and see. We'll wrap things up a little crosstalk. I believe Spence Checketts in the building. Haven't seen him in a couple of weeks. Happy to be doing some of that next. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700. Wrapping up the Sean O'Connell Show, last one before Christmas. Wishing all of you a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. We'll be back on Thursday and Friday this week. The Drive with Spence Checketts is coming up next. Spence Checketts is here in studio with me. Some topical trivia for you. We have 2 tickets to Parker McCollum at the Maverick Center on August 1st. 2 tickets to give away. How many players in NBA history have ever had 10 blocks and 4 made three-pointers in a single game? We talked about that earlier on the show. 10 blocks, 4 made three-pointers in a single game. How many players in NBA history have done that successfully? 877-353-0700. If you know the answer, you get 2 tickets to a concert coming up at the Maverick Center. Parker McCollum.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Sean. How are you?
Hello.
That list has to be short.
It's a short list.
Is it more than one?
It's a short list.
Okay. It feels like it might be only one. I'm racking my brain.
It's a short list.
Yeah, it feels like it's very short. Welcome home.
Thank you.
Good to see you, buddy.
Good to be back.
Yeah,
Great to be back.
It was fun getting to know Zachariah a little bit better, hanging out with him a little bit, rode home. Little crosstalk. I did crosstalk every day I was available, so I don't hear it from your guy.
He actually, because he and I talked a lot and have talked since I got home, and he's a big Spence Checketts fan.
Yeah, he's a good dude. Zachariah's good people.
He thought that was some of the better parts of the day was the crosstalk.
Good. Yeah, we had a good time.
He's like a sports junkie like you, and he knows.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and a basketball guy, too. So
yeah, big basketball guy.
How about the Jazz winning 2 straight games last week? Hang a banner.
I don't like that.
I don't like it either. But
I don't like that.
That's too positive, Spence.
Yeah, we
don't like the energy.
I'm getting a lot of feedback that I'm being too hard on the Jazz right now. So I'm going to try to be nice. Detroit, Brooklyn also rebuilding. But yeah, 2 straight wins. And now they're sitting in the 5th spot.
I'll tell you what. In the NBA, because it's the longer season and the full schedule, that you have a nice little run here, and you could still. It's such a weird thing to say. You could still be bad enough that you get that great draft position.
Mm-hmm.
What the Raiders did to themselves this past weekend with a meaningless victory, and taking them to now the 6th draft pick position, is like it's unforgivable.
Yeah.
In the NBA, there's a little wiggle room in either direction, but the NFL just zooms right in on that kind of like. But I guess what do? When you're a player, you're supposed to play hard.
Hey, let me get your Sam Darnold take. I don't think I've ever talked to you about this before because Sam Darnold was my hope as a Jets fan. Like, we watched him, obviously, Pac-12 footprint, saw Sam play a couple times, and I loved him. I'm like, all right, this is the dude that finally is going to bring us out of the doldrums. And, look, it's just, even as a Jet fan, you have to acknowledge it is where quarterbacks go to die. Yes. I don't know if Zach Wilson would have been awesome somewhere else, but I think he would have had a better shot to show who he could be as an NFL quarterback. But he's 8-1 in one-score games with the Vikings. He's got 32 touchdown passes. They're 8-0 without their starting left tackle. Like, he looks now the way I always thought he would look. They've got J.J. McCarthy. Like, did you think Sam Darnold was going to be a great NFL quarterback when the Jets drafted him?
No.
You did not.
I thought he was going to be a better NFL quarterback than he's been. I thought he could be maybe what he is now. I don't know if he's yet great for the, because you need a larger sample size.
Uh-huh.
But we did see also, like, if you remember, Sam Darnold's first real college game was against the Utes, and he played incredibly well in what ended up being a narrow loss for USC.
Yeah.
Not because of anything he did. It was just Utah was a better team and made the plays that they needed to make. But the first time I saw Sam Darnold, I was just like, oh, my.
Maybe that's what colored my opinion, because I remember that game. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was like, oh, my gosh, this Darnold kid is going to be a problem. And then it all regresses to the mean. And in the NFL, I'm with you. Especially as a quarterback, your draft placement and the situation you are put in is so, so, so important. And that's the worst one. That's the worst for him. It was worse for Zach Wilson. And by the way, for Darnold, it's not like then the next stop was that much better.
Sure.
Or the next stop was that much better. But now he's playing well enough. I view all this NFL stuff and this quarterback stuff through the 49ers lens as they are out of playoff contention when they were supposed to be in the Super Bowl. And I'm looking, I'm saying, you absolutely cannot pay Brock Purdy $50 million a year.
Yeah.
Well, then who's your answer if it's not Brock Purdy? And it's like, why not Sam Darnold, who's already worn that uniform one time?
Yeah.
Why not Sam Darnold?
Yeah.
Why not somebody who has rebuilt his image and rebuilt his confidence, which I still think is not talked about enough for NFL quarterbacks? But if Geno Smith can have 9 bad years of NFL football and then be really good, Why can't Sam Darnold be that?
Yeah, it leaves your mind open for second and third opportunities, what Baker's done in Tampa Bay. Like, can Zach find a home where maybe he recaptures what everybody saw that led him to being such a high draft pick and maybe another opportunity? It's just what, like, and Aaron Rodgers goes on McAfee's show today, and he's like, hey, I'll totally mentor a rookie quarterback next year. He's like, shut up, dude. Just shut up. I've just had enough of it. And it comes from the prism of just being a sour Jets fan. But every time I lock in on Darnold, I'm like, yeah, this is the guy who I thought we were going to have under quarterback. So anyway, down the stretch we come. NFL has been awesome this year. It's been a lot of fun, even though your boys are out. Kind of like the Utes last couple of years, just way too many injuries. You can't compete.
Look, for the teams that I have ever been emotionally invested in,
Yeah.
the 49ers, bad year. Utes, bad year. Notre Dame is my only hope left. Right,
Are you a fighting Irish guy? I didn't know that about you.
When you're an Irish Catholic kid growing up anywhere, Notre Dame football is part of your childhood.
For sure.
And also, we didn't have cable until I was in college. And so Notre Dame is the team you could watch every week.
Yep.
So, yeah, I'm a Notre Dame fan, but not like I am a Utah alum. So,
are you ready to scratch and scrap the CFP model after the weekend? It seems like everybody's like done with college football.
I loved it.
Everyone calm down.
I thought it was fantastic, and I love the fact that Lane Kiffin is out here publicly whining. It's
troll.
It's fantastic. This product is great. The only thing threatening it is not the decision to do the whole expanded college football playoff. You could make it even bigger, and it would be even better.
Mm-hmm.
You could do what the FCS does and have a real playoff every single year with a bunch of teams in it. The thing that is a threat to college football right now is you dragged your feet too long as the NCAA, and you've removed all legal power from your own decision-making, and now players can have too much of what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's no permanence, and it's impossible for anyone without $20 million, $25 million a year of NIL funds to build a roster that's going to be close to the same in year one as it is in year four. That's becoming a real threat to college football and to the fandom of college football in places like Salt Lake City.
Mm-hmm.
And I would still submit even in places like Provo, they're feeling really good about things right now with the season that they had, but it's not Eugene, Oregon, and it's not Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and it's not Atlanta. At some point, something has to be figured out. But I asked Adam Rittenberg this, can you put that genie in the bottle after it's been let out? And the answer is no. What you have to do is you have to trick the genie into going into the bottle, like Aladdin tricked Jafar into wishing he could be a genie, and that's how he trapped him in the lamp. If you remember that from the Disney classic Aladdin.
Did you and Rittenberg go back and forth on this?
No, I didn't. Bring it up
they
with that.
traded Disney references.
Because my man's a nerd. If Rittenberg's a Disney adult, that just tracks. He's very smart, but good to have you back, man.
Yeah, good to be back. Stay tuned for the Drive with Spence Checketts. Thank you to all of you who listen to this show. Have a very, very Merry Christmas. Stay happy, stay healthy. Sean O'Connell Show finished for the day on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM.